to notice that I can't watch the actual YouTube videos that I'm not. I thought I joined, but g'day, how are you, mate?
Now, all of it that I just said was for nothing because I turned on the wrong microphone. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday night. I've got Danny. You might have heard him talking. Without me. I've got Danny. So I am still hearing some feedback coming through your side there, Danny. So if there's, I don't know if there's anything you can do.
Is that better?
Well, we'll find out in a second here. Yeah, I don't hear myself again. So that is good. So, all right. With that out of the way, hopefully. I think people, I don't know if people saw it or not or got it, but the thumbnail for this, I put in a little couple aliens flying around flat Earth because of your history. You told me a little bit about your history. Why don't you just introduce yourself so people know a little bit about yourself? Go ahead.
Okay, so my journey to become a flat earther happened between year 2015 and 2017. I was basically going through a paradigm shift in the way I thought of many things. But to get a better understanding, I was born and raised a Mormon. And so in the Mormon religion, we're really into the universe with many planets. And that when we die, we become a god and we'll own our own planet like Kolob or Kobal, which you see in Battlestar Galactica. So the whole concept of the aliens, we believe that there's life form on other planets and that we will become a Jesus Christ in another Earth, another planet like this one. And we will progress or develop from red blood to a clear liquid that will be transparent and will have far better senses and all the rest of it, like aliens that are pictured in that are caught in Nevada over in the desert. Anyway, my awakening, I realized that the Mormon church was a massive cult and a big lie. But what woke me up to all of it was the concept flat Earth. And I know there's a lot of people out there that hate Eric Dubay, but back then in 2015, there were various people, not just Eric Dubay, but various people out there that were putting on all sorts of videos and experiments that they were showing. But that's when I started doing my own experiments, and I used this baby. This is a zoom lens, and the shot where I live over in shot photos from Portsea, Sorrento, to Melbourne, the city of Melbourne, and I could see the bottom of the building, and that's approximately about nearly 40 miles away. And so that was the beginning of me doing my own little experiments, because I couldn't see any curvature from the flat sea coming into Port Phillip Bay from that jetty. And so after that, I started, investigating the trip of the guy that discovered Australia. I know everybody else discovered it before, but like America, it wasn't Christopher Columbus. But in any case, Captain James Cook, who officially discovered it for the British, and he went around Antarctica, and 1,000 miles, and it took him over 2 years. So I was thinking, well, hang on for a second. I mean, the diameter around the equator is supposedly only 12,000 miles. So how could following around Antarctica be so much more? In fact, if we were to look at it on a globe, that would mean that Antarctica would cover the whole southern hemisphere. It would be under ice. So that was the beginning of many things that I had, and there's the Admiral Byrd. I'm sure you've heard of him, the guy that flew into Antarctica and discovered all sorts of various things. But anyway, the other side, unfortunately for the Mormons, is they've been taught to deceive that God has a law of what they call white lies, if you will, and that deception is all about in order to dress up as as Esau, Jacob was able to steal the blessing of Esau. So we've got this idea that Nephi in the Book of Mormon killed Laban, dressed up as an imposter, pretended he was Laban, then stole the gold plates that is in what Joseph translated. And since then, we believe that there are Quakers on the moon and different people on different planets, and that we have to go and proselyte to them and preach the gospel to all these different aliens at different planets.
Okay. So as the Mormon or LDS or whatever the proper term is, thinks that they need to go to the moon to proselytize to the Quakers on the moon.
Well, they already sent one of the astronauts with the Book of Mormon, and it was a real famous event. The Book of Mormon was presented to who were on the moon.
But, it was presented on the moon.
Yeah, it was.
But, was one of the astronauts a Mormon?
Interesting things about NASA.
Go ahead.
The particular astronaut who was assigned the job to take the Book of Mormon to the moon hasn't officially came out and said he was a Mormon, but most most of the astronauts are Mormons, like Jake Garn and all the famous ones that you hear about. They're mostly Mormons, or if they're not, they're Freemasons working with the Mormon Church. But most of the directors in NASA are Mormons, and they'll always boast about how they were inspired to become the director of NASA because of such and such. But it really is a conflict of interest because in the end they own General Electric, and General Electric makes most of the rockets, like that baby behind you, that nice rocket there. I don't know if you remember back in 1986 when they sent the space shuttle up and it exploded, and the Mormons were the one that were accused of faulty rings because they were too cold or whatever, and they somehow caused the rocket boosters to explode. But yeah, um, you made
So,
how many of the?
to be clear, do you agree that people went to the moon?
Okay, so um, if I told you the Mormon point of view, um, no, we know they didn't, but we we had to deceive to make it look like we did. Now, in the future years to come, they're going to say, "Oh, it was because of Russia. They put the Sputnik up, and it was it was a race to get up there who was going to be first." So, through the whole Cold War period. So there was all that justification, and but um, it's virtually impossible to get on the plasma. I'll tell you now, you
So,
can't stand on plasma.
why? But what about plasma?
Yeah, plasma is just a light surface. It's not solid. You
No, but
can't
why did
stand
you?
on it.
I'm sorry, I'm missing. Why did you bring up plasma?
Because the moon is plasma. It's
Oh,
not. It's not a hard surface.
why do you think the moon is plasma?
One of the most famous scientists in Australia did a quite a big investigational research into the moon, and just before the event of Neil Armstrong going up to the so-called moon, he was very clear that it would be impossible to land on the moon because it was plasma, that it was not a solid surface at all.
So who is this guy? An Australian?
Okay, I I could send you a link of the YouTube. Hang on.
Because obviously the moon
Um,
is made of cheese, not plasma. Um,
yeah,
unless plasma is the name of cheese.
yeah. Well, it looks like Swiss cheese, doesn't it?
Um, yeah, there. People are asking, where's Professor Phil Bell and PhD Tony when I need them? They're both Australian people that have been on my show. Yeah, and somebody else says he thought the moon was made of marshmallows. So all right, so do you know who this guy is that said that the moon is made of cheese or not cheese? Oh, sorry, that was actually
Yeah,
an
I'm
accident.
I'm sending you YouTube.
Because I've seen
Are you there?
the clip that Eric Dubay included in his mockumentary Level of just some guy who we don't really know his name and we don't know his background saying things about the moon. Oh, that's the one.
So yeah, okay. Well,
So
his name's Professor
a
Foster.
it's just a guy saying, but did he? Is there any like measurements or how did he determine that to be the case?
Okay, there is quite a lot of research done by him, and there were quite a few scientists that, obviously in Australia, we're far enough that we weren't subjected to all the propaganda that was going on in the US. So there's going to be difference of opinions, just like in Russia. The first group that set in a balloon and went right up as high as they possibly could and came back with the discovery that the Earth was flat. But things like that were put under the rug, pushed under the rug because it's not convenient. See, you have to look at it in a capital society. If we are to continually spread our wings and reinvest, we've got to keep finding more real estate. And so, if we keep selling outside of this world, then all these proposals. Who am I to say that there are no such thing as Martians on Mars? If I see them,
Okay, so I have the Professor Foster up that I'm looking at, and it's just him saying things. Do you have like?
Well, he makes it very clear in that speech. You'd have to listen to the whole thing, but he talks about it being accepted in Oxford, in England, that it was presented in his thesis was presented to a board, and they came out and certified and agreed that what his theory had merit. Now, obviously, shortly after, because that was in 1965, so shortly after, Neil Armstrong walks on the moon, and then this guy just disappears, never to be heard of again.
This guy disappears. Foster disappears.
Yeah, which like many like him, because they have to rewrite the whole. Because at that time, that was ABC, which is a government channel. That's Australian broadcast company, and that was an interview, official interview. There were no, influenced by financial corporations, CNN report or something like that.
Okay.
And so back in those days, not so much now, but back in those days, there was still credibility for ABC. They used to go to the nitty gritty and interview people, so it was a bit more legit.
But so outside of this interview, what did he present? Is there anything that can be looked at, or is it just one interview and that's it? Yeah, because you wouldn't take just a guy on TV saying the moon is plasma, and that's all that you would need to be convinced that the moon is plasma. You certainly didn't have that standard of evidence. You certainly must have looked at his publications to come to the conclusion that he was correct, right?
I haven't read all his thesis, but it is available. Like I say, it's in the Oxford library, and it's over in England. But I have taken enough of the text that interests me, only because I'm not interested in a lot of the scientific stuff. I'm a pretty layman type of person, tradesman. But I work with a theodolite, so I shoot levels most of the time. So everything's based on sea level.
Okay,
so,
but
I've got a pretty straightforward.
Let's not go there just yet. If we can.
Yeah. Okay. No worries.
Because
okay. So finishing up.
I'm just looking. This video is just this guy making claims. So.
Yes. Okay. So, unfortunately, I can't expand with this particular gentleman. He is there. There was a time where the moon was thought upon as a plasma until Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. But prior to that, it was always thought about as a plasma. So, we've got to jump. Well, depending on who, Mormons didn't. Obviously, Mormons believed there was colonies there of Quakers, and that they needed to join the faith, the Book of Mormon faith. So, but that's a different story. But getting back to this professor, I can't go any further with that because I don't have enough information.
Because I have let's see, the mean distance to the moon as determined by radar measurements from 1959 and 1960, available on Harvard. It's not their publication, it's just on Harvard, it's available. So this is prior to anybody going to the moon, where they did radar mapping of the moon and the distance to it. Right here. Yale University, New Haven, Connecticut, U.S. Naval Research Laboratory, Radio Astronomy Branch in Washington, D.C. So these people did not think before Neil Armstrong landed on the moon that it was plasma.
And unfortunately, I take it, and I don't want you to think I'm being discriminative or something here. I take a lot of Harvard stuff as
That's
only because I know a
okay.
lot of
That's fine. But
a lot of those
this is from Yale.
influencing.
This is from Yale.
Oh yeah, that's even worse, Skull and Bones. But yeah, that's the whole Bush family. But anyway, getting back to because the Bush family was heavily invested in satellite communications. In fact, there's
We're getting
trillions of
back. We
dollars.
can't get back to the Bush family. We haven't been to the Bush family yet today.
No, I'm sorry. I just quoted that then to point out Yale. The word Yale is synonymous to Bush family. Okay, that's only because of the Skull and Bones. So it's there's certain institutions that I trust more than others, only because of the influence of the corporations that are involved. Those that are got their um, finger in the pie, if you will. But with with the plasma thing, it's a very difficult thing to prove. But talking about distance, now that is a very interesting point. If if the moon is 240,000 miles away from the Earth, and we had to build this dish, I don't know if you ever heard of the movie The Dish. That was Sam Neill was the main actor in that. It's about the Australian dish that was used. So the walkie-talkie, Motorola walkie-talkie that Neil Armstrong had could um, send a signal from the moon to the White House, so President Nixon could talk to him on his landline. And without that dish, he wouldn't have been able to communicate, supposedly. But there's two issues point with that distance, and that is first, there's no signal today. It doesn't matter whether it's the walkie-talkie or whatever mobile communication that can travel further than 100 miles without a tower or a mast. And here we have 240,000 miles. Think about that for a moment. A signal, because most signals degrade. You agree they degrade? Now, they might say that was a laser signal. It's just shooting a light from one
It's
point
not
to the
a.
other.
It wasn't a.
But
It was radar, or not radar. It was radio.
Okay, radio. Okay, so radio signals is when they come from the tower, right? They come out, they spread out like rings. Okay, but the problem is with that concept, as like the ripples in the water. When you throw a stone, the ripples as they spread out, they weaken, they get less in strength.
But that's
Same
why there's a
concept
dish. The dish focuses it.
Okay, the dish can only focus to a certain distance. There's to consider the idea, and this is where the second part comes. Just say, for argument's sake, it really could that back in the 1960s there was technology that could shoot the radio waves from Earth all the way Major Tom.
I don't. So I have a background in electrical engineering. Center. I have a background in electrical engineering. I have no problem with understanding how a dish could
okay. Then I have a question for you. Yeah. I have a question for you then. Okay, if you pointed a radio signal waves dish whatever, and if you could open up a microwave oven and you pushed on, what would happen to that radio waves?
Why a microwave oven?
Because there are three belts. They're called the Van Allen belts. And according to the engineer, NASA engineer, they're extreme radiation.
The
So much
the
so
Van
that he
Halen
had to
belts.
put yeah, that he had to put special protection on the cockpit to protect the computer and the guidance system as it was going through the radiational belts, because it would have sent the whole thing into haywire. Who knows, even fried those computer boards. But back in the days of the tin foil lunar modular, we see, they had very wafer thin. There was no lead
Okay, so
shielding over.
what type of radiation is in the Van Halen belts?
Okay, so radiation, whether it's gamma rays or whoever, we don't know. But whatever the rays are, whatever they're so extreme that they're going to degrade. They're going to break down that
Okay,
signal,
but
because there are three levels. There's three
what
stages.
but
So it's
what
got to
kind
go
of hold on,
through.
what kind of radiation is in the Van Halen belts?
Well, radiation, like radio, the word radio comes from radiation, to radiate, right? So whatever that signal is, whatever that waves are, is going to suffer interference. It's going to suffer static.
But
I know
what
because
type of radiation?
back in the days when we had a black and white telly to watch, Neil Armstrong live, as he said, one small step for man, one giant step. While he was doing that, you'll notice that I had to hold the antenna. I don't know if you remember the old black and white TVs. They had these like wires wrapped around a rod that sat on top of your telly. And so my mum and dad say, no, hold it here. No, 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 move over there. No, no, move over there. Because it would just keep getting out of static. But somehow we have this super dish that was able to penetrate that radiation, those three radiational fields, and get to 240,000 miles. Now, we could spend all day.
No,
But
I want to.
a,
You're calling into
we could spend
question.
all day
You're calling into question
arguing
the Van
about the
Halen
Van
belts.
Halen radiation belts.
But
I
what
don't
type of?
know.
Okay,
I don't know.
I'll tell
And
you.
I'm just trusting what the NASA engineer said when he said that they lose the signal when they get through the Van Halen belt, and that they needed protection from the Van Halen belt because they'll lose the signal. So that's enough for me. If their own scientists or their own engineers are claiming that they have to have some form of protection, then there's something there. Now, I don't believe anyone's ever been up there. You could come up with a theory and say what those radiation belts are, but
mind if I have a
yeah,
response to
for
that?
sure. Go for it.
All right.
Go for it.
The type of radiation is alpha and beta radiation.
How do you know that? Who told you that?
Well, that would be information from James Van Allen himself.
But who's James Van Allen?
The guy who the belts are named after.
Okay, but he never actually went out there, did he? This is all a theory.
You don't actually have to go somewhere to measure it. That's the cool thing about doing scientific research. You can figure things out. So somebody had actually asked him and sent him an email, and he responded. I'll put it up on screen and I'll read it. Dear Mr. Lambert, in reply to your email, I send the following copy of a response that I wrote to another inquiry about 2 months ago. The radiation belts of the Earth do indeed pose important constraints on the safety of human spaceflight. The very energetic, tens to hundreds of mega electron volts, protons in the inner radiation belt are the most dangerous and most difficult to shield against. Specifically, prolonged flights, for example, ones many months in duration, of humans and other animals in orbits around the Earth must be conducted at altitudes less than about 250 miles in order to avoid significant radiation exposure. A person in the cabin of a space shuttle in a circular equatorial orbit in the most intense region of the inner radiation belt at an altitude of about 1,000 miles would be subjected to a fatal dosage of radiation in about a week. However, the outbound and inbound trajectories of the Apollo spacecraft cut through the outer portions of the inner belt, and because of their high speed, spent only about 15 minutes traversing the region and less than 2 hours traversing the much less penetrating radiation in the outer radiation belt. The resulting radiation exposure for the round trip was less than 1% of fatal dosage, a very minor risk among the far greater other risks of such flights. I made such estimates in the early 1960s, and so informed NASA engineers who were planning the Apollo flights. These estimates are still reliable. So that is the information from the guy after which they're named, and he's the one that gave the information to NASA. So I'm going with him over a TV interview. Right. Sound good?
Okay, so I just sent you some information from NASA. Now, obviously, NASA building the Orion was a new project. It's only a few years old. We're not talking back in the 70s. We're talking most recently. And I don't know if you received that information.
I did, and I specifically addressed that in my response.
If you read, okay, so if you read the part, I quote verbatim what he says. He clearly says, let's see, so if you watch between 3 and 3:40 in that video, the NASA engineer clearly says, and I will quote his words, as we go further away from the Earth, 3,600 miles, he said earlier, we pace through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems on board computers or other electronics on the Orion. We must solve these challenges before we send people out into space, close quote. That's just one comment.
Okay. So the guidance
of
systems.
The video is very important. The title of the video is very important. It's talking about Orion going through fire. He classifies these belts as like going through literally fire. And he's referring that if you watch the whole video, he does point out about the signal cutting off. And so they depend on the onboard computer to take whatever sensors, like what they say, it takes 24 hours for Mars to get back the information to NASA. The remote control is a 24-hour delay between each. The command of there's a Mars robot vehicle currently on Mars, and the remote control is a 24-hour delay, they say. So they send the commands to this machine, this robot, and it will do everything in the day, and then it will relay the information at the end of the day, whether it's photos or videos or whatever.
Okay.
So I would love to have a remote control that was that powerful. I mean, I don't think they should keep it back just for themselves. It's a bit greedy. I think we all should be entitled to drones that could go that far. But that's another story. And really, the whole idea of the signal. What is the furthest you can go with your drone? If you went down to Kmart or Walmart and bought a drone, where's the furthest you can go? Not very far. Definitely not 36 million miles, not 240.
Yeah, there's a bit difference in the technology there. But if you wanted
but cell phones,
could build yourself a
far
dish.
Better than the walkie-talkies back in the days of Neil Armstrong, wouldn't you say? So if we've got cell phones,
all right, let's. I want to come back to something you said. You did not believe that radio waves could pass through the Van Halen belts, as you said, because they're so strong. Now, what other than just I don't think that it could happen, do you have to suggest that it could not actually happen?
Okay, I'll send you a diagram. What happens? All radio waves bounce. They bounce off the hemisphere and come straight back.
Not all. It depends on the frequency. I understand this. It depends on the frequency. So not all of them. And it also depends on their angle of incidence.
Okay. But what I'm trying to say is the inferior technology back in the days in the 60s
Doesn't matter.
the
That doesn't
chances
change.
of
That doesn't change the physics of it. If
okay.
if it's not a frequency that's bounced by the ionosphere, and it's not at an angle that's going to cause it to bounce, it'll just go straight through. No problem.
I was just finishing a conversation with a technician in England who installs satellite dishes on roofs, and he says if it's 2 degrees out,
Yes.
now let's think about this for a moment. 2 degrees out, he will lose the signal to the channels of the local channel stations or whatever cable, and it will hit another cable
A different
company
satellite.
that's from Dubai or Abu Dhabi, then it'll be complete Arabic channels. Now, here's the thing: when you shoot a laser, right, from a theodolite,
These aren't
1
lasers.
millimeter.
These are radio waves.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example though,
Okay.
because this is about lights, and he kept going on about light refraction or some crap. But anyway, my point is, to every meter, okay, if you're out 1 millimeter, and we're calculating now, we're going 22,000 miles, because he claimed that all the satellites are around the equator and that they're 22,000 miles out from the Earth. And so if we were to calculate that in meters, that's, you know, if he says that 2 degrees will cause the signal to go off and it will tap into a different set of signals from a different satellite. 22,000 miles, that you know. But here's what
What was your point about that, though?
I'm not going to say believe. I'm not going to say believe. I know. I'm going to tell you this because I have a friend who works on the 5G towers everywhere. The point is that all these towers that are sitting on buildings all over the place, and they have one monster, giant one. It looks like the Eiffel Tower. That's normally in every city, and they're sending down their what do you call frequencies and signals and whatever. They are actually called satellites. Now, a lot of people don't know that the tower mast that these poor guys crawl all the way up, so high. They're very dangerous work to adjust those little dishes on top of those towers. They are actually called satellites. And so those tower antennas, we've got a bunch of them from one location to another, and they all weave around and they all send messages. So the dishes, now here's the point. In Australia, we have very, very, very hot weather, right? And then we get very extreme cold weather, and that's because of the desert climate and the Bass Strait winds and colds. And so what happens, a lot of us have tin roofs. And I don't know if you know what happens to a tin roof when it goes hot and cold, but it moves. It actually literally shrinks and moves. So if you've got this satellite dish sitting on a tin roof, on a hot tin roof, with a bunch of tin Aboriginals, doing a Komori, you see what will happen. You can fry an egg on that. It actually moves. You can see the actual sheets of corrugation. It literally move, each one. So the satellite dish itself is going to move, and it's going to be more than 2 degrees. I guarantee you that. And yet we don't lose the signal. So I mean, it's.
So how did you quantify?
That doesn't make sense.
Wait. So you're saying that because they're sitting on a tin roof, and they're attached to the tin of the roof, and the tin moves when it gets hot, that you're definitely certain that it moves that it changes the angle by more than 2 degrees.
Well, the sheets naturally do that. They buckle. They buckle in the different climates. That's natural.
Certainly.
Especially on a truss roof.
Yes, thermal contraction and expansion. Absolutely. So.
Yeah, and so it knocks it out more than 2 degrees.
How did you quantify that?
So what I'm trying to say is that if he is adjusting it so perfectly that even out of 1 degree, and we're talking 22,000 miles away, we're not talking, just to a tower. 1 millimeter to every meter, it's starting to whack out because it doubles. It's like synergy. It just keeps doubling and doubling, you know?
Danny, hold on. The
Okay.
multi-meter diameter satellite dish
Mm-hmm.
that was used to send signals to and from the moon,
Mm-hmm.
that is on a motor that's fixed firmly into the ground is in no way analogous to a half-meter diameter dish on a tin roof. There's no analog between them in the ability
No, I'm not
aim
making
the
a
signal.
comparison. I'm not making a comparison. I'm just saying that in order to get a signal to 22,000 miles, we're not talking 240,000 miles, which supposedly NASA landed on the moon at a distance of 240,000 miles. I'm just talking 22,000 miles. And here we have this engineer saying that they're setting a goal to go 3,600 miles through the Van Allen belt. So, I mean, what is the truth, and why is there so much discrepancy in
I don't see
distances?
I don't see any problem with any of this, because you didn't give me the EIRP analysis of the dish that they used to talk to the moon.
Okay, so
can you give me the EIRP analysis of the dish they used to talk to the moon and show that it can't do it? Okay, you don't know what EIRP analysis is.
Here's the thing. Okay, I could pull a whole bunch of figures out of my butt right now and give you. I could Google the whole thing, but I'm just using sensors and logic from using lasers and theodolites myself. On just like that gentleman, the technician said, that if he just moved it 2 degrees off, he would lose the signal. So my point is that if that's the case, and we're talking a distance of 22,000 miles, I can't shoot a laser that far. I don't know anyone that can shoot a laser that far. But anyone that can, good on them. I'd love to see that laser. That sounds pretty amazing to me. But my point is that radio waves degrade, and they degrade very quickly. I've never heard of radio waves being so supersonic that they'll penetrate these radiation belts, these 3 Van Allen belts. Now, I hear you're saying, oh, there's not enough radiation in them to do anything.
I'm not saying there's not enough radiation. I'm saying that type of radiation does not affect radio waves how you think it does.
Yeah, well, in the case of radiation, I think I sent you a message that clearly states. Let me see if I did or not. No, I didn't. All right. So here it says, because the instruments and onboard computers will go haywire, the radiation belt is a zone of energetic charged particles, most of which originate from the solar wind. They are captured by and held around the planet by the planet's magnetosphere. I can't say these words, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So, unless we're magneto, I just can't see it possible that we have that superpower to penetrate such things,
okay,
Danny.
Danny.
I mean, Magneto had that special thing over his head to protect him from.
Danny, you do not have a background in radio transmission.
No, I don't. Okay. No, I don't. Absolutely not.
I do. Okay. So you have is I don't think it's possible. I have the background and training and skill and education to say that's not a problem at all.
Okay. So why then are planes that travel at 40,000 feet lose a signal when they go over the ocean? The GPS is no longer working. Now we know that there are optic fibers that go.
That's not true.
It's programmed in a
Danny, I'll explain it then. They get a GPS signal the entire time. The plane never stops getting a GPS signal. What happens is the older I think it's ADS systems were communicated to the ground, and so the plane sent its current location to a spot on the ground. It always knows its location. It always is receiving a GPS signal, but it's not able to send its signal back to the ground because over the water, they did not have those receiver stations. So that's why in the older systems, a plane would take off and it'd get out to sea a bit, and you would not see its updated position in real time. The newer systems send it through a satellite, so they're able to get it all the way across the ocean.
I don't believe that for a minute.
Well,
there's no such thing.
Okay, well, incredulity gets you nothing, right?
Ask one pilot, just please show me one pilot that will suggest what you just said. There's no pilot.
Just one.
The system is the same. The autopilot system is put on for a reason, because
this isn't autopilot. This is different than autopilot.
I have a friend whose job, listen to this, his job is to drive planes, right, to get the program of where they're going to land and where they're going off. Now, why would he need to do that? Why would he need to program that if everything was done by GPS? I don't know if you know what I'm saying.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so there are special technician pilots who don't take passengers or anything, but their job is to, if a new airport, right, is just made, right, their job is to fly their technical planes to create a path, and that path will be programmed in a computer. They give the magnitude, the longitude, and whatever. They measure it, and then it's all manually plugged in. And then once they've got it all done, then when the pilots go to fly with commercial airlines, they have this program that was already created by a pilot, not by GPS, but by pilots that had already, the engineers who had created the flight path for them. Does that make sense? That the autopilot system is not running by GPS at all. It's a software that was programmed by taking a flight literally and measuring those locations and landing or wherever at that location, and it was all put in the computer, so it's there in the memory bank.
So they use waypoints. You know what waypoints are?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, so
but
then,
I'm just
then
trying
please,
to tell you because that's
please, Danny, please don't try to inform me about how
no, I'm not
fly.
informing you. I'm just sharing you the experiences of pilots who have told me what their jobs are and what they do. And they've told me very clearly they don't use GPS from signals from satellites when they're traveling over the water. And the other thing is, if that was so true, then why have we got all this optic fiber, all the cables that's running millions of...
What the hell are you talking about, Danny?
Okay.
There is no way that a fiber on the bottom of the ocean can send a signal up through the water to an airplane.
No, it doesn't.
No
it doesn't.
way
it doesn't.
possible.
No, that's right. But Australia's internet is connected to your internet, not, or Google, whatever you want to say, that's in California, wherever it is. We are connected through cables, not through satellite.
I never claimed that they were connected by satellites. Why would you make such a ridiculous claim? That is stupid.
No,
nobody thinks that the majority of the internet is connected by satellites. Nobody does. Okay. So that's a ridiculous claim that has made me angry because it's so absolutely stupid. Why would you suggest that? Why would you suggest that? Stop it. You just thought, stop. You're way off on nothing here, Danny. You're talking about planes like you know how they work. You don't. You're talking about radio waves like you know how they work. You don't know. Danny, don't talk about things you don't know about.
Okay. So I'm just sharing with you information that what I'm trying to say is
information that you don't know anything about.
For example, when I say off the grid, what I mean is that when a plane flies over, once it gets off mainland and it goes over the ocean, it's now off the grid.
It's
It
not
loses its
anymore.
signal.
Flight Radar 24 currently tracks them.
Well, that's because, there's probably other systems in it.
Yes, exactly. Like I said, they send it by satellite.
Well, I wouldn't say satellite like you. I recognize satellite. I would say towers being satellites, in different
Towers in the
islands
middle
or
of the
whatever.
ocean?
That's probably spread. No towers, no ships with huge masts and also.
And you've seen them. You know about them. You know people that work on them.
Sorry, there are different ships. I mean, these are all thrown out there as alternative. I mean, just like any theory that men evolved from apes, it's just a theory, right? We're just throwing these ideas out. It could be conjecture. It could be opinion.
Danny,
It could,
all you have is conjecture.
It could be based on facts. Okay, but I believe satellites is conjecture as well. I believe that it's like the word gravity.
On them.
It's used
we
to
can watch rockets
everything.
Launch.
Where do they go? They all go to the Bermuda Triangle.
Receiver pointed with a directional antenna to the sky and zero in on a specific position of a satellite. But you can't
Which one, the ISS?
that. No, the GPS satellites are not the ISS. They're different.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the one that I've taken photos of, but I'm very skeptical that's and I took them from this thing, but I'm very skeptical.
Did you get pictures of it? How could you get pictures of it and then be skeptical of it?
Because they have a tracking. You can follow the tracking. I'll tell you when it crosses over and stuff. So if you get
that adds credibility. That doesn't make it more suspicious.
No, it doesn't, because it just means that there are numerous of balloons that look like satellites, and they put them up.
How does a balloon move that fast?
Here it is now.
Danny, how does a balloon move that fast?
It doesn't need to. It doesn't need to. You have numerous. In other words, you have one in San Francisco, you have one in Sydney, you have one in New York. Danny, they're all over the place.
That's what it looks like. You can track a satellite as it comes from the horizon. Just crosses the horizon. You can track it all the way across the sky until it leaves the other horizon.
Yeah, until you lose.
And the speed at which it's traveling could not be a balloon.
Well, it's all up in the air, because the balloons these days have jets, and they're
the balloons these days have what?
Yeah, the NASA balloons have jets. They take passengers. They're amazing.
The balloons
like
have
Hitler's
jets.
One, the
hold on a second. Yeah. I want to hear this. The balloons have jets.
Engines, yep, they sure do. Jets. Not just propellers like they used to.
The balloons.
You know what I'm talking about? The long subway, or whatever they're called. I'm not talking about the big, bulky round balloon. I'm talking about the long sandwich ones. They look like an airplane or a space shuttle. In fact,
so it's not a jet. It's not a balloon. It's just an airplane.
No, it's a balloon. It's full of helium. It's made with the cabin underneath, and it has propellers, or it'll have jets on it.
Or a jet.
They fly.
So it's a balloon, and it goes.
You can take a ride. NASA sells tickets. You can take.
Oh my goodness, that's new. I've never heard that one before.
And they're the shape of the space shuttle. They're really cool.
Sure.
They look just like the space shuttle. You never know.
Okay. I have a couple questions from the audience. They're quite enthralled by this, I think. Jeez. Carlio
now,
Stress.
Can I just say, just between you and me right now, this is off the record, that everything I say is factually proven. I do not theorize. And do you know why I can say that?
Okay.
Do you know why I can say that? Because I know the manufacturers. I know them personally. And I know how much bullshit they're making.
Of the balloons?
When I say something, I am literally telling you from the horse's mouth. And I can prove all that. But at this time, I'm just talking as a layman that is totally ignorant, just someone out there that believes in flat Earth. If the other side, which I can back up everything I say, in a factual point of view, that's a different kettle of fish. But just for the hypotheticals, just to throw these ideas out there, that there's more than one way to skin a cat.
That cat was Turtle that we was just on there.
Okay, it's a beautiful cat.
And for some reason it was all wet. I don't know why.
Oh no,
he was wet. All right, I've got a couple comments and questions from the audience here. We've got Carlos Strands says, this person that knows me says, nice to finally catch you live. Not sure if you remember me, called Curious Squirrel from the TFES forums. Been fun going through your videos these past months, so thank you very much. Curious Squirrel, I do remember that name. I haven't been on those forums for a while. RT96 says, I'm with Danny. Battlestar Galactica is real. So say we all. I think we've got a Battlestar Galactica.
We're sort of breaking up, I don't know why.
What's that? All right. Harold says, how many moon wives are allowed by the Mormon religion? I want to make sure I'm not over the limit. Now he's no longer a Mormon, people.
No, I left the Mormon church because I became a flat earther. Prior to that, I was deep into Kolob and Battlestar Galactica. The Mormons made movies. And like Omnicron, which comes from Star Trek, and all these viruses, names like the Altair, they're all Mormon viruses. That's a different story.
First time I've heard that too, but yes, let's. I prefer not to get into that because YouTube doesn't like those.
I know.
So what is the quantity of moon wives allowed for Harold?
Well, unlike the Muslims, that if you do a kamikaze, you're going to get 60 virgins in paradise. The way it works in the Mormon church, if your wife dies, then you can marry the second wife also under the covenant, which will be polygamy in the next life. Because right now there's two Mormons. There's the faction which is called the fundamentalists, and they still practice. They can have up to 30, 40 wives. That's all right. But in the conservative bunch, that's the guys that you see in the black suits that look like Men in Black, or in the Matrix, Agent Smith. Appropriate name, of course, Joseph Smith, Agent Smith. But if you notice those guys, they also have a little earplug with a little thing that they're sent to do their little missions. They have a black book, and so everyone in your suburb is registered. They know you by name. They know exactly your activity. They're monitoring you like scouts, just like the Peace Corps. When they get back from their mission, they're encouraged to go into, which is next door to the MTC, that's the mission center, that's at Brigham Young University in Provo. They're encouraged to join the FBI or the CIA. In fact, most the national, what you call the NSA, the General Brent Scowcroft, he was general for the last 6 US presidents in the national, NSA. These type of people, believe me, they've saturated the intelligence community. They're all over the place, and they're the ones involved heavily in the so-called alien contacts that you hear constantly. And
okay,
that's the difference to me.
But the question was, so the answer would just be a number. How many moon wives can Harold have?
Well,
one? Depends if he's going to go fundamental or not, right?
Yeah, if he's fundamentalist, he can have as many as he wants.
Okay.
But he's got to prove he can financially support.
All right. There you go, Harold. Now we're talking. You've got to be able to prove you for finances. All right. The Logical Hillbilly says, is this all that's left on Flat Earth? Nutters and conmen. Oh, wait, that's all they ever were. Carry on. Tell you, this is certainly a different flavor I've had many conversations. This is one of the more unique ones. So all right, Virillion for $5 Australian, this guy is from Australia, says that Professor Foster, right? He makes that Australian beer, it must be. He says that scientist is talking about the moon rocks being melted by heat on the plasma scale due to impacts. Now, I've seen that interview, and I don't think that's what he was talking about. Right? A question from another Australian, Professor Phil Bell, is asking, there are dishes in the outback on people's houses, right? To get TV signals. What are they being pointed at?
Well, the tallest towers, the taller they are, they send a signal that comes out. It doesn't go like this way, but the rings are going out long ways. And so as they spread out...
That's not how radio waves work, by the way. Continue.
Well, that's the transmitter waves I'm talking about for satellite dish, But I don't know about radio waves, but yeah.
I know.
I'm just referring to the
I believe
signals.
you.
So anyway, my point is that there are towers everywhere. And when in Australia,
outback,
the problem we have, if you go with your cell phone out of radio range, which means there's no tower around, the signal drops. And so you have to make sure you're always around a tower, even though we're told that the satellite signal comes straight from the satellites.
Cell phones are not satellites.
The signals.
Nobody thinks that your cell phone is getting a signal from a satellite. Nobody thinks that.
Well, but what about
unless you specifically have a satellite phone? Neil Armstrong was around.
It was a Motorola.
Before, you may not know this, but Neil Armstrong going to the moon was before cell phones were around.
That's right. And he had a Motorola brick phone. You can go on NASA's website and they'll just explain the technology that they use. It was a Motorola. He had the antenna on the back, his little flimsy little thing.
Yeah, and
there was no propagation.
Let me explain. It talked to the LEM. It sent a signal to the LEM, and the LEM had a dish pointed up towards the Earth.
Live coverage.
Yes.
Black and white.
Yes.
Back in their days.
Yeah.
And we can't do it since. There's no live coverage. We still depend on either the internet like we're doing right now, or there's no way we can get live coverage. If I wanted to see you live coverage, if I got a telephone, like a news, just a local TV news station back where you live. I don't know where you live, but wherever it is, they do not have the power to transmit live to me here in Melbourne, Australia. They don't have it. There's no technology that'll do that unless it's connected to the optic fibers that go under the ocean.
What does that have to do with a satellite dish that's multiple meters in diameter, pointed very precisely?
240,000 miles.
It doesn't matter. If unless you're going to give me the EIRP analysis, don't be talking about distances, okay? Because I can relate to the EIRP analysis. You don't have that, so you can't say it could not go that distance unless you have done the analysis or have set that you can point it to. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know radio waves. You don't know how radio waves propagate.
I have a friend who works in intelligence that works on towers, okay, military intelligence, who was working in the period of time around the 60s and the 70s especially. And he explains quite clearly that there is no such thing as any form of radio wave that could go 22,000 miles, let alone 240,000 miles. There's nothing on this earth that can do that.
So some unnamed guy saying, nuh-uh. versus
No, this is in military intelligence that who worked on those towers, who actually transmitted signals and code from one tower to another. Like in Latin America, they had those codes they had to do against the communists back in the Guatemala period and so forth. And he told me quite clearly, there's nothing, any technology like that that exists and has ever existed. I mean, if there was, why can't we use it today? Why are we being left in the dark? Why are we using inferior telephones?
We can use it
Why are we
today.
using cell phones that lose their signal when you get out of radio range? Why can't we use these super, technological advancements that shoots these live coverage, mind you, live coverage?
We can. The problem is, I'll explain it to you. You've asked a bunch of questions. Let me answer some of them for you instead of you asking more. It's kind of rude if you don't let me answer.
Okay.
Right? Cell phones are regulated by the different countries. In the United States, it's the FCC, as how much power they're allowed to output for safety, for human safety. So a cell phone cannot output enough power when you're out in the wilderness to talk to a tower because it would be unhealthy. Plus, it needs to use a battery that drains the battery quicker. So there's physical limitations.
What do you mean by unhealthy? Unhealthy of what?
Too much exposure. Too much radio wave exposure.
So what about Neil Armstrong? Would he have had a lot of exposure transmitting 240?
No, because like I said, it was a dish.
That would be some serious exposure.
It was a dish on the LEM, the thing that landed on the ground there on the moon. There's a dish that pointed up towards the Earth.
It was tiny. It was tiny.
It doesn't need to be.
It wasn't like the big one that had.
So the question you asked, and I was answering, was would the astronauts have been affected by too strong of a radiation? No, because it was sent by a dish, not on their backpack. Their backpack all the way to Earth, no. Backpack to LEM, to dish, to Earth, yes.
I get it. They had this mobile, portable satellite dish on the lunar vehicle, whatever it was, modular, whatever. And you're saying that dish, even though it was small, was capable of shooting a signal 240,000 miles down to Earth. Live footage, television footage, as he's also talking to the President of America on the phone.
Yes.
It's pretty hard to believe, don't you think?
No, not at all.
We could probably get all the physics.
Absolutely no problem understanding it. Yeah, it's not hard to believe in the least for anybody that understands radio transmissions.
What I was told by certain technicians arguing to me is that no, it's light. It's light that they shot to the dish on the moon, and that was their justification. That the signal was not a normal radio signal. That it was light. That radio signals are actually light. Now, what's your opinion on that?
It was not light. It was radio waves. The frequencies are published. People know what they were. People eavesdropped and recorded the conversations as they happened.
I remember that.
Yeah. So it's not. It wasn't light. It was just radio waves. Now, radio waves and light are both.
Finding the Coca-Cola.
Radio waves and light are both photons. That's how they travel. But there are quite different properties and characteristics based on frequency. So Professor Phil Bell is still asking about the outback. Let's do some math. How far away from an outback town are these towers?
I have no idea. I just know Pine Gap's got some serious towers out there in Pine Gap, so we're not even allowed there. The Aussies, the military site.
Okay, but in the middle of the outback, you can point a dish. You can point a dish, and you can get TV.
And they've got millions of dishes and all these weird-looking golf ball-looking things.
Not in some military. Just in the middle of the wilderness, far from anywhere that matters. You can stop. You can point a dish. You can aim it, and you can get a signal.
Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to. You can follow it up. You can find out exactly how many towers there are. Remember, these are the towers that they build all the way along the east coast from Northern Territory to South Australia. There's what they call the train road that goes right through from the top to north to south. But I don't know how many towers follow that line. I'm not a specialist or a technician, but you can find out. There's a way to search that. But yeah, I do not believe. Well, it's not that I believe, because I believe belief is just human. I know there's no such thing as satellites other than satellite antennas that are on the ground, and it's not feasible to do it.
But you haven't explained very well the replacement.
Well, wouldn't you agree it's a bit of an overkill if we have these giant towers built everywhere? If everything is dependent by satellites, I mean, they're mounting them on tops of buildings all in Melbourne right now. They just keep putting more and more towers up everywhere. And as you go from Melbourne, or where I live, out towards Sorrento, it's an hour drive, and you see towers everywhere, and especially those 5G towers and all the rest of them. Well, I don't know in the outback because I haven't gone that far, but I do know that there exists towers, and whether or not what is going on in the outback, I'm not sure. But as of if the argument is that a tower cannot transmit a signal very far, then how on earth does a satellite do that?
How on earth does what?
The question I have, if the antenna does not transmit a signal, propagate the signal very far on Earth, then how does a signal transport from 22,000 miles away to the Earth?
Good question.
You see?
Excellent question. And it's about aiming the signal, like in a parabolic dish, number one. Number two, power. Huge difference in power. That's how. But since you don't know, since you don't know how the radio waves work, it wouldn't make very much sense for me to explain it to you.
But let's talk about power, because that's a good point, because it needs electricity, doesn't it, to pump it. So the power that is generated from the ground supply from our power plants would have to be much more powerful than the solar panels of a space shuttle, right? Sorry, a satellite. See, the satellite dish is dependent on so-called solar panels. They don't have any connection with the mainland when it comes to, and so that's one of the reasons we do have the optic fiber through the ocean, because to pump that type of signal through from one place to the other is much, wire on wire is always, wireless is never as good as
correct. So I'll explain it then, since you asked another question. How because they didn't have the power on the moon. The dish, one of the dishes that they use is 26 meters in diameter. Now, you've talked about miles, and some people were curious, being an Australian, that you were talking about miles instead of kilometers. But 26 meters is the diameter of one of the dishes that was used to communicate to the moon. Extremely powerful and extremely large. So the way they are able to do that to the LEM, which had significantly less power, because from the Earth, they're able to send the signal with a very high power. So the smaller dish on the LEM was able to receive it. There was still enough signal for it to receive it. The LEM sending the signal back had a very focused dish, and it was being received by a 26 meter diameter dish that's able to capture a large amount of the radio signal and focus it. That's how it worked.
I see. Yeah, because just to apologize to any of those Aussies why I'm talking in miles. I left 25 years ago in 1995 went to Utah, and I was living with the Mormons in Utah. So my accent might not be clear Aussie
Okay.
because I've only been back to Australia for 2 years, and that was only because I left the Mormon faith and became a flat earther. That's why I came back to the flattest place on the earth, Australia. It's the flattest land you'll ever see. There's no doubt about that.
The other reason you asked about why can't cell phones work when you get far away from a tower, and that's because of the curve of the earth gets in the way. Let me read this to you from, let's see, Stringfellow Hawk says, we've bounced radar off the moon many times, but Gary Berghoff is tired of going, so stop asking. Now, in case anybody wonders who is Gary Berghoff, anybody in chat know who Gary Berghoff is? Do you know, Danny?
Never heard of him.
You ever watch the TV show MASH?
Okay.
The character named Radar was played by the actor Gary Berghoff. So bouncing radar off the moon, you see what he's doing there? He's talking about the actor, the guy from MASH, Radar, bouncing the guy from MASH off. But anyway, very, very funny. Yes, Radar MASH. People got it. Good. Virillion says you can bypass the Van Halen belts by doing a jump.
Okay. There are 3 though, so that makes it a bit hard. But I when people blame Bill Gates for everything.
No, we don't.
Well, a lot of people do. But he's just a little man. He's just a little man. Imagine an organization that owns a corporation of people who are devoted, that will slice their throat.
But Bill Gates doesn't have that. He just has a bunch of nerds that are programmers.
That's right. And they all work for an organization
called Microsoft.
They will slice their throats.
No, they won't.
They will slice their throats. No, I'm not talking about Microsoft. You're down. You're going down the corporate ladder. I'm going up.
Okay.
I'm going to the people that are the shareholders.
All right, I'm going to go to this one here. Let's see. Tim Tully says Van Halen belt. David Lee Roth is behind it all.
Oh, there you go.
Absolutely.
I used to like some of these songs. They were cool.
Let's see. Professor Phil Bell again says the tower, if the tower is 100 miles away and the dish is 73 degrees, that's the angle to the sky, in outback Queensland, it would need to be 327 miles high. You get that?
Well, the frequency can be that high. The tower doesn't have to be that high.
No, frequencies aren't measured in miles high.
Yeah,
I'll draw a picture.
So when you say that, you don't need the tower to be that high, because the transmitter that transmits the signal is going to spread right through the sky, and so how far that spreads depends on how powerful the transmitter is that's propagating the signal.
Can you show me the EIRP analysis of that?
So
Danny, you're talking about stuff you don't know about.
If I use this pen-light battery, right? If I use just this, this is a double-A battery, and I wanted to transmit a signal from one walkie-talkie to the other, I am governed by the power of this.
Yeah, and also by aiming it too, right? So let me show you.
But the radio range of 2 walkie-talkies, what is the maximum the cops have?
I said the angle.
Radio.
We're talking about angle.
Okay.
So here I have a diagram. Here's a tower over here. See that tower? That's the radio tower.
Yeah.
So it's a tall tower, but look at this. This is angled wrong. And you already talked about if it's more than 2 degrees off, it can't get the signal. So,
yes. So how does it do it? How does it, when the roof is so hot that it buckles, causing the dish to move? It doesn't have to worry about 2 degrees, because there's another antenna that's on the other side, and it's shooting from this to the other one, straight across the same beams of signal. And this can be straight up and down. It doesn't matter. It's going to hit. It doesn't need to go in the direction of a tower because the tower is transmitting like an umbrella. If you can imagine how the umbrella...
Danny, I'm going to stop you right there. You don't know what you're talking about. All right, I'm going to keep moving on because that's all rubbish. So, all right. Jeez, no kidding. Rags says, this sad man's a perfect example of what having absolutely zero standards of evidence does to a person. You were trying to tell me how radio waves work. That's not how they work, Danny. They don't go out horizontally and then somehow curve down to go into the dish. The dish is very directional.
They never curve down. They never curve down.
Then how does it get into the dish at the angle that the dish is focused on?
The dish is sending the signal and hitting these waves that's coming across.
The dish
that's
on top of somebody's house.
So the dish
on somebody's house doesn't send out.
The beam, it's grabbing these frequencies or these signals that are coming off the transmitting off.
Grabbing them.
So yes, it doesn't need to be pointed to the antenna, because the antenna has. It's just like, I was saying with the good old-fashioned antenna of the television. You used to have to stand in position, until you got a signal. Otherwise it'll go all staticky. It's the same concept. I know it sounds funny. I know it doesn't.
That's not how any of this works. Danny, oh my gosh.
I can send you the diagrams of it.
Go right ahead. That's like that. The dish on somebody's... Danny, listen, Danny. The dish on somebody's house does not send out a signal and grab the radio waves and bring it back down. No, that's not how it works.
No, it shoots a beam that will hit
no, it doesn't.
Signal that's being released.
They're receive only. They are receive only.
Okay, so there are you telling me, because this is from a technician that told me who installs them, that if he was 2 degrees out...
Yeah, did he tell you that the dish sends a signal to go grab it and bring it back?
What he does is that it sends a signal to the satellite that's 22,000 miles in space, and then it relays the message back.
No.
That without...
That's not how
there has to be some way that there is a connection between what's up there.
Receive only.
Well, if you want to call it receive, how does it receive?
The satellite sends the signal, broadcasts it towards the Earth in a focused beam, so it only covers a certain geographic area, and the dish points up at the sky. It has the size of the dish, the surface area of the dish, collects all of the waves, the radio waves of the direction really matters. Bounces it towards the receiver that's in that little part that's on the arm up front there. And so it gets a focused beam that collects all of it from that whole area and focuses it on that small area. That's how it gets it. It's receive only. There are 2 ways, but the ones for TV are receive only.
Okay, so I have a question. Is it possible or not possible at all that the dish that's on the roof could ever point to an antenna and get a signal?
I suppose if you're really close to a tower, you could inadvertently be pointing to one. But in general, you're not pointing to them because there aren't towers in the way.
Okay, so what you're saying is there's 0 towers.
No, I'm saying there are towers for other purposes. But the satellite dishes on people's houses are receiving from satellites.
These tall towers, they're like the Eiffel Tower. And every city has them. Like we got the Rialto. It's one of the most tallest in the Southern Hemisphere, the building.
If that was the case.
Tall antennas
but everybody would have to point their dish at that tower. They don't. They point it towards the equator. Either if you're north or south of that tower, you point it the same direction.
the signal is coming from those tall towers straight down like rain. Can that happen?
That's not how
Can the
it
waves
works.
come down?
That's not how it works.
But then how does it work on a satellite?
How does it work on a satellite?
How does it shoot down?
Because there's a dish on the satellite that's
Okay,
transmitting towards the Earth.
Okay, so there's no dishes on the towers?
There are
There's
dishes on
hundreds
the
of
towers
dishes
as well, yeah.
Yeah.
For
So
all sorts
why
of
can't
purposes.
the dishes on the tower?
They have
Right.
dishes on towers that do line of sight, point to point between the towers for
Right.
backup or for primary. The
Right.
brands
Now,
they're blue.
television
Blue
stations.
Dragon Wave is an excellent
Mhm.
brand that does an excellent layer 1.5 high speed gigabit connection between point to point towers. But that has nothing to do with satellites.
Okay, so my question is, it is possible to have satellite dishes on the roofs of houses actually pointing to an antenna. It's not something that could not happen. We both agree to that.
You could have a couple, a very small number inadvertently, but
that doesn't why answer are television stations? It does, because that's not high enough. That particular
and Professor Phil
antenna.
Bell did the math. You would need an antenna that's 300 miles tall.
Well, in the outback. But if we're looking in Melbourne, for example, all the urbanisation, they all can take it from the Rialto. Here's the thing that's really interesting. All the local television stations own those type of antennas. Now, why would they need to own those antennas if they've got a spot in the satellite? That doesn't make sense.
Because your local TV station does not have a spot in the satellite. Your local TV station
there you go.
broadcasts non-satellite to the. They've been doing it since the 40s.
Television.
And your
That's
rabbit
right.
ear antenna, the rabbit ear antenna, which is not a dish and is not highly directional, on top of your TV, picks up that signal, which is a completely different way of transmitting data than through a dish.
Okay,
a dish
I agree.
Is highly directional.
I agree, but the television towers have those dishes on them, the same dishes you would see on the satellite.
Sure, makes no difference.
Why would they have them? Makes no difference. Why? Why would they have them if it's just local broadcasting?
So that
you see what I'm saying? So in order to get an international, I have to use cable. I use cable, which is connected to an internet, and that, for example, there is a main base in Melbourne, which is called I can't think of the name right now, but the cable TV company has these huge dishes, which they send signals out to the little dishes. Do you know what I'm saying? They're transmitting their stations, so you pay for they're like jumping, like what you call hijacking the thing. So you're paying them to give you what they've got. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say? Like these big cable TV companies, they've got satellite dishes, and what they receive on their satellite dish, they then send to all the little dishes all around town. Does that make sense?
It doesn't answer the outback.
Well, it's the same concept. Well, I don't know what channels you get in the outback. Are you getting all of them? Are they cable TV, or because
you're not getting channel 31.
Okay, so what you would get is if you got the local broadcasting televisions, that would be one thing because they'd have their own antennas, so it's picking up that way. If you're getting cable, then it would be on the basis that you have a cable company that has these huge satellites in their big backyard sending signals on the.
All right. Do you see that?
That's in a third world country here.
Yep. That's near the equator. What are they pointing at?
Well, obviously they're pointing up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think that these poor people that live in a third world country would point a dish at the sky like that and not receive a signal?
I lived in Panama for 15 years,
Okay.
and all these dishes that you're referring to right now, they're all receiving a signal from the cable. That was cable under, that's what it was called. Cable under sends a signal from their giant dish that they have in their headquarters in the main city and sends it to these. None of those dishes were getting signals from out in space. They were getting it from the local base.
But those dishes are highly directional. How did that highly directional antenna receive a signal?
Well, if you look at the design, you have that little black cap on the top
Yep.
and the 2, 3 bars, the pyramid. What is to say that the signal is going and hitting that and then bouncing into the dish? I don't know.
The
I'm
design
not
of the
qualified.
antenna is to say that. Yeah, people that understand these antennas and how they work, like myself, would say, no, that's not how it works. The people that understand how
That's
these
how I know
antennas
that
work, the way
we
that
paid
these
to
antennas
have it
work
on.
is you point it up at
Mhm,
something, it's extremely directional. And like your
mhm,
installer friend said, if you're a couple degrees
mhm,
off, you get no signal. So if that black
mhm,
thing is receiving a signal from the side and pretending
mhm,
to get it from the sky,
mhm.
then when it's slightly off, it would still get a signal because it's just getting it from the side and pretending to get it from the sky. But
No,
no,
because there
that's
are other
not what
signals out
happens.
there
What happens
too
instead is if you
that it's
point it.
interfering.
What's that?
For example, there are other companies and other signals, so it's easy to knock out and go to another company. That happened all the time. In fact, the dish that I had back in Panama, that was what was happening to me. So there's cable under is the main one, but there's a cable TV, I think it was called. But there were different companies, and they're all fighting over. And you paid, I think, $45 a month, and they would come and set up their little dish on your roof, and there was also, I think, Sky Direct TV too. But all these different companies, they all did the same thing. They all had a backyard full of these huge dishes that then transmitted the signal to the little dishes on the houses. That's how that worked. But how it
But
works for us
but
today,
you
we
didn't
don't
answer. You
have
didn't
this
answer because these
ability.
are highly directional.
Yeah. Well, again, highly directional doesn't necessarily mean that it's not taking the antenna signal. You know, those tall towers can still rain down and they could be being hit by those as well.
How? Because they're
You know,
highly directional. Back to this guy.
okay, so,
Back to this one. See this?
hmm hmm
How is
where
that?
does the signal go from the tower? Where does the signal
It
go from the
it
tower?
it it goes it goes
Because
out. Typically in
because
a
what you're doing, can I
you asked
ask
it.
you this
You
question?
asked a question. Let me
Yeah,
answer.
and
You asked how does
okay,
it go
sorry.
out from the tower?
Okay, yeah.
It typically it goes out. It depends. If it's a sector antenna, it's going to be
hmm
more focused. It's going to be 90 or 120 degrees. If it more like a radio tower or a TV tower, they tend to go in a full
Okay.
360 degrees. It goes out like a donut, and I'll show you.
Okay. So in that drawing that you have, you've got the satellite dish on the roof actually sending a beam
Now that's just I'm just
rather
drawing
than
the
it's
line of sight. Now you can see here.
okay.
I added
Okay.
the transmission from
Yeah.
here, right? Now the angle
Okay.
of that signal, I'll draw a picture. I'll add that
hmm
to the
hmm
picture so you can see the angle that it's going to come
Okay.
into the dish. There's the angle. Now that dish is highly tuned to focus stuff only from this angle right here. So the signal coming in at this angle will not get picked up by the dish because it won't get focused by it.
Okay. So what you're saying, so I understand, the the dish itself does not send any signals; it just receives signals. And you're saying that this tall antenna cannot be sending down anything direct to that dish because it's out of the line of sight between the point of the
It
transmitter
doesn't come
on
in
the
at the right
tower
angle.
and okay, but what if that's not the reason? What if the real reason is because the frequency is not strong enough, or there was another reason for why? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Well, you didn't present an alternative there.
argument. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
So here's my question: what if? Okay, this is just a what if question. What if there is no satellite? How would you explain how those satellite dishes could get the signal? Is there another method?
I could
You
not
being the
explain
genius
it.
in
That's
this
on you,
area
not me.
and the tech. Okay, all right. I'm just asking you because you're the technician in that area, so you may have had an alternative method of doing it. But all right, so I put it out there that there is another way, and that it doesn't have to come from 22,000 miles away, but it can be local from local antennas. And the gentleman in Australia who said it was 350 miles, then that seems small in compared to 22,000 miles. In the distance of a signal. So I mean, surely anything is possible in high-powered antennas and transmitters that's coming from not solar panels up in space, where the signal would have to degrade. Do you agree that radio waves degrade over
And
distance?
that's why I'm asking for the EIRP analysis.
Okay, so would it be fair to say then that if a signal did degrade, what kind of power pack would be necessary to send that signal 22,000? Well, let's jump back
That's
in
why,
time and say
again,
240,000.
you would need the EIRP analysis. Do you know what EIRP stands for?
Okay,
Do you know what
yeah, but
EIRP stands for?
I have no idea. I'm
Okay.
just saying, as a layman here,
Okay.
that if I was to say that 240,000 miles from the moon to Australia, for example, we could see a television live footage of in black and white TV. Now, back in those days, the television had these huge tubes inside it. It wasn't with the board like we have with the Silicon Valley stuff. It was all very,
They're
very
called
old
vacuum
fashioned. In
tubes.
fact, yeah, vacuum tubes.
Yeah.
It was very inferior. And whether or not the power that was in those vacuum tubes, I would imagine you would need a whole warehouse full of computers to be able to deal with such the capacity of a signal of that magnitude personally, because back in those days radios were huge. The old wireless, it was like a tower in itself. That was just to pick up local radio channels. So to be able to pick up something 240,000 miles away, it would have had to be like the size of a supermarket full of those vacuum tubes. And
sure.
So my point is
they had a large facility to do that. Yes, they definitely
so,
had a large facility to do that.
Okay, so it just seems extremely unrealistic.
You don't understand the topic, so you're extremely unrealistic. Your opinion on it is how
No,
whether
it's not an opinion. I
realistic or
asked
not.
you a question.
So
how much power would need necessary to prevent the degrading of a signal 240?
That's a great question, and I don't have the EIRP analysis handy.
And
for
unless
somebody
we
to
did
claim
have
that it's impossible, they would need to bring with them the technical analysis of it.
Right, but
To say,
at the same time,
here is the size. Here's the size of the dish. Here's the EIRP. Here's the power output. Here's the size of the dish on the LEM. Here's its sensitivity. Here's the frequencies. And run the analysis and say, oh, well, yes or no, that dish would be able to receive it or not.
But if it were, but in the same boat, to say impossible, it would also be the same. If you were to say it was possible, there would need to be backing. There would have to be the
Yes.
E word that you use
The
to
EIRP
back
analysis.
it, and
yes,
there is none. Yeah,
Oh,
and there is
there,
none.
there certainly
there is.
is. It's well documented.
There is.
It's well documented.
There's well
Yes.
documented. Okay.
So,
all right.
All right. I need to ask a couple more questions here because Saeed Ahmed says, right now, would there be an eruption if a rocket travels travels unchained through the Van Halen radiation belts?
Okay, so according to the engineer, the NASA engineer, he clearly said
Panama.
that any space. Sorry.
It's a music joke.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
Right now is a song by Van Halen. Eruption is a song by Van Halen. Unchained is a song by Van Halen.
Okay, so it's a joke.
There you go.
Sorry.
Tesla Bitten says tower climber here. So a guy that works on radio towers.
Mm-hmm.
And two-way radio tech for 14 years. This guy is totally wrong about RF, radio frequency, and has no clue what he's calling about.
Great. So does he believe then that it was possible to talk on the moon from Australia using Motorola very inferior technology to be able to communicate 240,000 miles? It's just a question. I don't have the answer. Does this man who claims that I don't have the answer, does he have the answer? Please help us in this.
Yep. Well, like I said, people have done the analysis. So Chronic Avenger says, how does the autopilot cross-reference their position in a plane?
Okay, so in the autopilot is programmed for obviously for long distances. It will stay level the whole time, the gyroscope. What it does is it does never follow a curvature of the Earth. It just goes straight across, and it gets from one destination to the other. Now, when the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, if we're flying the plane on the opposite direction, so if the Earth is spinning clockwise and we're going to fly anti-clockwise, then and the plane's, good commercial passenger flight might travel at about 700, 800 miles per hour. So while one is going at 1,000 miles per hour that way, and the plane is going at 700 or 800 miles that way, how does it ever get to its destination? Because
I'll answer that question.
Okay.
Because conservation of momentum exists. It's the first law of motion, and so that's why. Because when the plane takes off, and the plane is moving 1,000 miles an hour with the Earth, and the air is moving 1,000 miles an hour.
But it's going against some clockwise and anti-clockwise.
Doesn't matter which way it's going.
It does actually.
It gets into the air, which is moving at the same rate, approximately. Wind exists, approximately moving the same rate as the Earth, and so it's moving. If it's going one direction, it's going 1,500 miles an hour, absolute ECEF velocity. Or if it's going the other way, it's going 500 miles an hour ECEF velocity. But in relation to the surface of the Earth, it's going 500 miles an hour. Doesn't matter which direction, because conservation of momentum doesn't stop existing when the plane takes off from the ground.
So what about the Coriolis effect?
What about the Coriolis effect?
When you shoot a bullet, you have to align it to make sure that do you allow for the
when you're shooting over a mile long,
Mm-hmm. So when we're talking to get from Sydney to San Francisco, we're talking 16 hours in flight. So it's more than just a mile. So how does that work? I mean, how do we get to that fixed location? Because if I leave San Francisco and I start flying,
I can explain it to you.
The Sydney is already going past me that way, and I'm going that way if I'm traveling. Why not just sit there in the air and wait until Sydney comes to me? You know what I'm saying?
Because conservation of momentum exists. So I'll explain it to you. Coriolis, you did not just explain Coriolis at all. You once again pretended that conservation... I'll explain it. I'm answering the question. You asked a question. Don't be rude and stop. Stop
for sure.
interrupting me when I'm answering
Otherwise,
the question that you asked. I'm being polite to you
no problem.
to give you the knowledge, right? Coriolis is not what you explained. What you explained was, again, a misunderstanding of conservation momentum. Coriolis is a lateral force that is directly proportional to the velocity of the object that's moving. It is a very small amount of force from a pilot that flies I forgot the plane that he flies. Oh crud. Anyway, an Australian pilot goes by Wolfie 6020 specifically said that I just read it today. He said that Coriolis is slightly less than a 1 knot crosswind is about how effective it is on a plane. That's it. It's not that powerful. Bombardier Global Express is the plane that he flies. Thank you, Justin.
Okay. So why don't we feel anything? I mean, I feel tremors. We just had an earthquake recently in Melbourne. Jeepers, we felt that.
Because it's significantly less than the human's body's ability to feel rotation. Much less.
And why don't we see the stars going past as we're going 660,000 miles per hour?
Because they're also moving at the same rate, approximately.
So the vortex, with the sun moving, and then we're following the sun as it's going around, then there's 365 days and years, there's 4 seasons. So we've got north, west, east, south, whatever. So on every 3 months, we're at a different side of the sun. And so why don't we see different star constellations? Why do we only see the same stars all year round?
No, we see different constellations.
We don't see the same. We see. What do you mean by that? You're talking about Sagittarius and
you don't see Orion. You don't see Orion all year. You only see it for part of the year.
Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that on the other side of the sun, because we're talking 660 million, whatever it is, million miles away from one location to the other, to go right around, there must be different stars and constellations, right? And as we're moving, if the stars are moving, like you say, like I will see the other day, I just saw a shooting star. It was amazing. But when you see Star Wars, for example, and they push hyperspace and they suddenly get shoot off in supersonic speed, 600,000 miles per hour is pretty close to supersonic speed to me. So why aren't we seeing stars just flashing past us as we're zooming through, thrust into the...
Because I already answered that question. They're moving at about the same rate as us. Did you forget that?
In the opposite direction.
Okay.
How can they be moving?
Okay.
Because they're outside the solar system.
All right. Did you... All right, to get back to this. You cannot stay on topic, dude. Chronic Avenger asked, how does the autopilot cross-reference their position? How does an autopilot know where the plane's at?
Okay, so the plane is completely computerized with the longitude and magnitude through sensors. And so the flight that it takes, the path that it's following is completely programmed in. So it just follows that.
How does it know its position?
Because it has an onboard compass.
But a compass only gives you magnetic direction.
That's right. But electric ones are different. Digital ones are different.
It doesn't give you latitude or longitude. So how does the plane...
It doesn't need to. Have you ever seen the cockpit of a plane? It's got thousands of instruments, not just one or two.
But how does the plane know its location on the Earth?
Okay, so the plane does not know its location. It follows the program. So if it's programmed to go straight ahead, it'll go straight ahead. I suppose it's a bit like the Tesla auto manual cars right now. There are cars now that you don't need to drive. They'll drive by itself. So, I mean, there are many ways that they can program things.
All right, we're going to move on. We're going to... That's not how they do it. They know where they're at. The planes know where they're at. Jeez. Big TB1717 says, now I'm a little mad. Scientific theories aren't just people pulling random crap out of their butts like he's doing. They are the results of lots of actual work that he is just dismissing.
Well, theories are theories. Whether we're saying that, you see, up in Australia, we have a place called Darwin, which was named after Charles Darwin, because when he came to visit Australia, he saw the Aborigines and thought that they looked like gorillas. And so he said that was his theory of evolution, that, well, the Aborigine looks like an ape, so maybe we should connect all white men back to the apes, because supposedly Australia is the most primitive land on the earth. So that's a theory that I find offensive. I find it racist and completely sick. And so not all scientific theories, especially the scientists that were working for the Nazi program, who were then sent to NASA to work on, like Ben Burke, these people, they believed in a perfect race. They had ethnic cleansing and all sorts of things. So not all theories,
Danny,
this idea
this is
that
about
all scientists are
your
not
your misrepresentation of how science uses the word theory. In science,
no, because I just gave an example that there are many theories that are just unacceptable.
I'll explain the difference to you.
Okay.
We use the word in common language. I'm explaining it. You need to listen while I'm explaining.
Okay.
We use in common language, use the word theory to mean guess or hypothesis. In science, the word theory is something that's well understood and significantly well supported by lots and lots of evidence. Okay, so you can consider in the frame of science that a theory is something that's extremely confirmed and we're very certain about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a hypothesis. So when Darwin came, he had maybe a hypothesis about the Aboriginals, not a theory. So theories, the confirmed things in science, are not things that people just pulled out of their butt. You don't get to, nothing is called a theory in science until it's been thoroughly confirmed.
And there is no confirmation of space. There's no confirmation that the planets
instantly jump to a different topic. Let me show you something.
No, because this is all about the theory that we live in a solar system and that the sun is the center of the solar system. And but yet in the Bible, the creation was the earth was first, and then after the earth was created,
I'm showing you this.
4 days later, the sun and the moon was created. So that's not a theory, that's a revelation from God.
Okay.
We can disapprove that too, you know? I mean,
all right, I'm showing you here. Look at this here. You see this? I took this picture myself.
Okay.
I was flying from Anchorage to Minneapolis. This is over the Yukon Territory in Canada. Very rural.
Okay.
Mountainous. No cell phone signal at all. But you can see up at the top there that I have my coordinates.
Mm-hmm.
Plus,
that's all programmed by software.
How did this phone know where I was? How did it know?
Because it was programmed.
But how did my phone that I bought from Verizon years prior know that I would be above the Yukon Territory at this moment? How did it know that?
Through sensors. Whenever you walk in a place, you get the sensor for Wi-Fi sensor.
What sensors in this phone?
Bluetooth sensor.
What sensor in this phone?
Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. You get all sorts of things activating all the time when you walk in different shops and everywhere you go.
But how did this phone get it? I wasn't in a shop. I was in an airplane.
Okay, so the plane also has sensors, just like Wi-Fi.
And how did the airplane know where it was?
The airplane, as I said to you before, or I keep telling you, that this is all programmed. It's not a GPS.
Earlier, you said the plane did not know where it was. So if the plane,
no, I didn't
according
say,
to you, the plane did not know where it was, but my phone knew where it was.
You're playing semantics. That's a game of semantics.
Okay. Well, then how did I get
my words are very clear. My words are very clear. I'm saying that your coordinates, with latitude and longitude, whatever it is, they are programmed in a software So as the plane, and it will have sensors that will know when it's dropping. It will have sensors when it's rising. It's all part of the connection of the computer. It's all being computerized in. It's not. It doesn't have a mind of its own. It's all programmed, and it was done by someone who was a technician who flew the plane and stored all that information for you. It's not just happened because it's reading as it's flying. It's been stored, and your phone
you're supporting evidence for this claim.
Into that information.
You're supporting
your
evidence
phone
for this
tapping
claim,
into that information. Oh, there's plenty of supporting evidence that
then
software
is just leak it to me
computer,
right
now. All cockpits are computerized. They're not manually driven. They've all got all of the. When a pilot sits in his chair, he has a special pad with all the readings of everything he has to do, where he's going to plug in, punch in the key, the coordinates or whatever to start the flight. It will already be programmed in. It's not. He's not randomly just flying in the sky and just taking off and just randomly saying, "Oh, I think I better go this way. Or I think I better go that way." No.
So you're saying that when the plane takes off, the pilot, he has no damn clue what's going on. The plane knows it.
Okay, so the
right?
pilots are completely dependent on the computer system. Without it, they'll be just flying,
in a Piper, even in a small single.
Okay, so the light planes, they still do have their coordinates and systems that's computerized and put in the software. It's not like the old days where what do you call the dust crops, where you just fly randomly over a farm and spread. Yeah, they're different. We're talking, but the technology today is so the radars on the towers can keep track of where the planes are going, leaving and coming in. Everything is got sensors now. It's not, and you can fly under the radar, but you have to be pretty low. Otherwise, you might hit the water. It's pretty dangerous.
Okay, so I'm still wondering for this picture. Then how did the plane that you said earlier didn't know where it was somehow, right? How did it get that?
Okay, so again, the readings that you're seeing up there were programmed in there. So
in what?
The distance that it's traveling, the height that it's traveling is all measured by the software that was computerized in.
And if the pilot diverges from,
so for example, when you travel,
the pilot diverges from the original flight plan, what happens then?
Okay, so it'll go nuts. It starts ringing, blah, blah, blah. You get little red lights going off everywhere if he just suddenly goes manual and tries to take over. The whole thing is completely controlled by the software. You can't just go off course like that. I mean, unless something is seriously wrong.
You understand that the pilots that are in the audience right now are just crapping themselves with all the BS that you're spewing.
I guarantee you that every pilot that's driving a passenger plane, a commercial passenger plane, over 200 people, is a 747, is flying with a computer, with software. That is a guidance system on board. Every plane has a guidance system, and that guidance system is controlled by the software that was put in by the technician who flew the plane to get the correct flights in the first place.
So the pilot doesn't put in the path that they're going to go. Somebody else does.
Yes, of course. When they first check in, they have this pad and they check in the destination of the flight. They confirm it with the tower. This is where they're leaving and going. That's just normal, But as I say, the convenience of computer technology today is that everything is computerized. And they don't need to be on the handles to, trying to control it manually. It's all autopilot. It just runs freely. In this case, you're saying 35,000. It's roughly about 8 miles. So the minute it takes off from the airport and starts heading up, it's measuring each mile. It goes up until it gets to the height.
How does it measure? How does it measure each mile?
Because just like, you know, a speedometer on the car, it has your kilometers or mileage. This works at the same concept. It goes by distance. It has a
how does it
radar.
measure
Some
the distance?
have an antenna. Some have an antenna at the front of the plane that takes a reading. Some have it at the back. But in any case, they all have that antenna that will give them their heights as they go up and down.
But where's it getting that signal from?
The signal is just the sign of measurement as it's going up. It's not a signal received by a tower or satellite or anything like that. It's just it's an onboard radar system on the computer itself, and that's how it takes its measurements.
I mean, it's fun that you're just making this up. It's entertaining.
No, I'm not making this up.
Of course you are.
That's exactly how the system works. It is worked because the way they have these sensors set up, they know exactly the distance from the ground. Like, you know, when you go to park your car, right? And it goes beep, 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 beep. The closer you get, the little alarm goes off telling you you're getting too close to the other car. That's the same concept with planes. It knows because of the measurements that as it's lifting up, there is a gyroscope.
Let's be clear.
The gyroscope is actually giving a digital reading of every level of measurement.
Let's be clear here. You, a non-pilot, are telling pilots how they do their job, basically, right?
No, the pilots don't get told how to do their job. The software tells them that. And the commands.
I mean, you're saying that they never turn off the autopilot, and they can never diverge from their plan that they originally had because the plane won't let them.
They can turn it off and they can drive it manually, but it is. I mean, you do it unless you have to. I mean, you might fall into some turbulence.
But if they do diverge from their plan, they have no idea where they are because their position was pre-programmed before they took off.
No, because they can still follow it through the gyroscope and through the technology that they have on the computer itself, the onboard guide, because everything is a guiding system.
But how does it know its location?
Its location is by using the technician will put in all the distance. For example, you've ever played the game Battleship?
No. Forget that.
So you
how
does it know the battleships in a certain place?
Yeah, but how does it know your position?
A1, for example, and then you hear the torpedo if it hits the part of the hull of the battleship. That's how it's done. I'm using a very simplistic layman terms, but it's the same concept.
But you didn't answer. How does the plane know where it's at?
Okay, so the plane is got it all. How would you say? Everything is in a memory bank. Everything is stored. So there's not one place where the plane has not gone before. Okay, so it goes by the reading of its, the technician who did the first set of flights. So whoever created the flight path for that plane has plugged in every step all the way until it gets back to its final destination.
Right. And if the pilot turns off autopilot and he diverges from the course, the plane will still think it's on the original course then, correct?
It'll be shot down if he goes over Russia, that's for sure. And
I'm not talking about Russia. I'm just talking about
I'm talking
going 20 miles to the side. It will still be reporting
that
it was
far when they went over Russia.
I'm not talking about Russia.
They wouldn't want to do it because it's not convenient.
But they've done it. People have done it.
Go into foreign land and they'll be shot down.
People fly else.
It's illegal.
You're just making up more stuff.
True. Okay. There's a flight pass.
I gotta read another one here. This is amazing. Cretan Bill says earlier tonight someone was on who couldn't understand how maps work. He wasn't the dumbest guest this evening. People are not taken in by your descriptions here.
It doesn't matter whether they take them in or not. These are people that believe the Earth is spinning and traveling at 600,000 and calling me dumb. I mean, I don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. I've given up on that. And I gave up the Tooth Fairy, and I gave up the Easter Bunny when I was a kid. I was lied to half my life. So, yeah, believe me, there are 10 million people that believe that Joseph Smith received gold plates from an angel called Moroni out from the hill of Cumorah. And that turns out that there's an island called Cumorah, and its a city is called Moroni. What's the chances of that?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, people don't. What is that saying that Tom Hanks said? Stupid is as stupid does, and we all got stupid things we do. And whether or not one man's trash is another man's treasure, it would classify it as dumb, So, I mean, of course, on your side, everything I say is just BS. But if you knew where I'm coming from, you would understand. Oh, heck, he probably has a lot more information than he's letting on.
All right, I got another from Just for Kicks says, well, a helium balloon with a cabin under it and jets.
Mm-hmm.
That's the blimp with jets.
Mm-hmm.
So how big the balloon would be, and how much helium is required to lift the load that's got a jet, the multiple jets.
Turbine jets. Well, you can wear turbine jets on your feet, and you can fly around. They're quite cool. You don't have to have very heavy jets. I mean, turbine jets are all different. One on an MR Toyota one, like that. That was pretty cool. So, I mean, jets jet engines are pretty light.
Just get a foot size, 1 or 2 foot size jets. All right, Magellan says, good luck with today's guy. Cheers, MC2, and thanks, Magellan. He lives really close to the equator, so he sees those dishes pointing straight up.
You know what he should do if he does live near? If you go to Ecuador, okay, there's this place.
He's in Singapore.
When you stand. Oh, okay. Well, in Ecuador, for example, there's this place where these people, they have this sink, and they get a bucket of water and they pour it into the sink, and they show the water goes around clockwise, and then when you go on the other side of the line, it will go in anti-clockwise. And then if you go in the center of the line, it actually just drops right through. But the whole thing was fraud. It's been found out that, no, it's the way that you tip the water. You tip it from the right side, it'll go in the whirlwind that way. If you tip it from the left side, it'll go in the whirlwind that way. So it was a scam.
Yeah, nobody, that's not.
Well, a lot of tourists buy into that, and they give money to see that little activity.
Tribal Guy 2 says, any actual professional
The reason I said that is because I was told, being down under, that the toilet water goes in reverse. It was
that was just from The Simpsons. Tribal Guy 2 says, any actual professional friends such as Danny is describing would never entrust ideas like he's claiming to someone who thinks like Danny.
Sorry, what was that?
I think Tribal Guy is saying that like the technician who works on dishes, whatever, that during the NASA missions to the moon, wouldn't tell you that stuff anyway. Room 237 says, I wonder how many brain surgery scars is hidden under that toupee. That's not a toupee. That's full, right?
What is that? My hair?
Yeah.
That's not like Donald Trump.
Have you seen
full of dandruff?
Have you seen CC from Westchester County?
I don't know what that is.
No? That people have likened your hair to CC from Westchester County.
Let me check it out. CC.
Yeah, it's just the letter C twice. It's hard to find them, actually. Oh, this is a good question. Magellan says,
I hope they're not being cruel to me. CC from
Westchester County. Is it? Yeah, Chris. Good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you may be. Chris, CC from Westchester County. That's how he introduces all of his videos. His hair, his hair's a little similar to you.
It's coming up as a golf course.
It's really hard to find his channel. Because it's just.
Oh, okay. It's a channel. Okay, no worries.
So, all right. Magellan says, Danny, do you think Bill Gates is a lizard person?
No, I don't. I do believe in the Illuminati. I do believe in Freemasons. I was a 33-degree Mason, as well as a Mormon, and I used to stab skulls, the skull of the Pope, down with this imposter, and the skull of the king with a regal downward tyranny. And part of the Freemason group that I was a part of, we had where we swore oaths where we slice our throat if we reveal any of the secrets of deception. We swore on the Quran, and we made oaths promising certain things. So that was basically all true. But as of lizards, no one turns into lizards. That's all what I call counterintelligence from the CIA to make a mockery of an institution like Skull and Bones.
All right, well, I'm glad you don't go for the lizard people.
No.
Okay.
Maybe the Quakers on the moon for a little while there, but I've given up on that too.
Okay. Stevie B says Lake Titicaca. You know what I'm saying, right? Lake Titicaca. To help with the lack of facts. Oh, thank you very much, Stevie B.
What that word means, but anyway,
it's a lake. It's in Panama.
Yeah, whatever.
I think definitely Panama. Who is the most well decorated Olympic rower in Australia?
I don't follow the Olympics, so I couldn't tell you.
I can tell you, his name is Michael Toon.
Oh, there you go.
Not me though. I'm not that Michael Toon.
Okay. Very good. Congratulations. Maybe you're related.
Could be. Todbert. Australia beat England of day 3 of the 5-day cricket test. So instead, I'm here listening to Danny. I hate England. Do you follow cricket?
Benson and Hedges. Ashes. There you go.
Do you follow cricket?
Yeah, a little bit. The MCG's not far from me.
The MC Toon's not far from you?
Ground. Melbourne Cricket Ground.
Oh, okay.
MCG. Mm-hmm.
So Jolene says, Danny, you're out of your element.
Oh, here we go. What element is that?
I think
the lizard element?
I think a lot of it might be the radar and radio wave stuff. Because this next one here says Rocky Bixby says that the satellite dishes, they're not satellite dishes, they're solar powered barbecues.
Have you heard that cell phones cause cancer? We all should wear tinfoil hats.
I've heard that, but studies say otherwise. So Dave Fear says this guy thinks that all form of communications are the same thing: cell, satellite, microwave, TV, radio, all the same, right?
No. The television, the black and white television with the big tube, vacuum tube that was used in 1960s to see the live coverage of Neil Armstrong. It's different. What was that, UHF or whatever they call it? I don't know what this one was.
Yeah, U62 with George Newman.
Right, there you go.
And Stanley Spadowski. So, here this. Okay.
Do you know who invented the television? A Mormon. I kid you not.
I was gonna go with Stanley Spadowski, but it could be. So let's see. Falbios 1 says TV and radio in Melbourne are sent from Mount Dandenong. Did I say that right? Dandenong.
Andy, yeah. What about
not the Rialto elevation 633 meters plus 72 to 180 meter high towers.
Yeah, the Mormon who invented the television, his name was Philo Farnsworth. And they also designed, Marriott, he was a Mormon. He designed the first drive-ins. And it's quite interesting. KFC, good old Colonel Sanders came to the Mormon church for funding. That's why they own Taco Bell and they own Pizza Hut and KFC and all the rest of them. It's all part of the Mormon franchise.
Okay.
The light companies, big nuclear plants that provide electricity, the one that leaked in Japan, and the one in Chernobyl, Wormwood, that was all Mormon owned.
Okay.
What I was trying to get before when I was talking about Bill Gates, he's just a small man. If you've got an organization that's 10 million strong, and in that they've all got one focus to take over the American government and to enforce the New World Order according to General Brent Scowcroft, with the leader of the Mormon prophet leading the church and the government. That's pretty scary stuff. And they've been trying. Mitt Romney nearly got there, but they keep trying, and they'll eventually get there.
Magellan asks, Danny, do you think planes rely on dead reckoning for navigation?
Sorry?
Do you think that planes rely on dead reckoning for navigation?
Okay, so when you're going over the sea, there is no signal from satellites. Zero. It's dead. It's totally by itself with a computer on board through autopilot, programmed to follow the path that it was programmed to follow. It won't go off course because that's the course that it's always been measured on. Everything's on through measurements.
Okay. And he continues, I don't need to be rude, Danny, but I don't think your brain is synapsing properly.
It's not about whether my brain is working properly. Everybody has different theories. Everybody has different beliefs. Whether that theory can be proved to fact is a different story, you know? I'm just saying what I know as fact, not theory.
This is a good question. Aaron Reese says, please explain how pilots navigate long distances using instrument flight regulations without visibility or autopilot.
Okay, so again, as I was trying to explain before, if by accident, for example, there was an airliner that hit a mountain in Colombia, that for some reason the sensor had redirected and it went too low and it smashed into that happens in places like Honduras, where in Tegucigalpa Airport, the flights are very unstable as they're coming into land. The way that all flights should be is programmed in the software to just follow directly. Autopilot will not stop being autopilot, no matter whether it's a terrible storm or not. It will still keep going forward because it's just following the program that it was put in to do, and that's all. It's not going to deviate. If it does, then there's something wrong.
But the question was, how do pilots navigate long distances using IFR without visibility and without autopilot?
Well, most pilots fall asleep. They don't have any visibility at all. They sleep on the trip. They have a bit of a nap, or watch telly or something else, so they don't necessarily need to have any visibility at all.
But if there's no autopilot, how do they do it?
I haven't heard of a plane without autopilot. I'm talking about the commercial flights, the 747s, the big ones.
Okay, but how does? But there are planes that fly without autopilot long distances, or you just say they don't exist?
So the light planes, the light planes that have a simple system still have a tracking device, and they still follow that tracking device. Every plane today has some form of guidance system.
So even if it doesn't have autopilot, it has autopilot.
So, when they say a plane doesn't have autopilot, I don't know a plane that doesn't have autopilot, because most planes do. If it doesn't have an autopilot system, and it's flying manually, completely manually from one location to another, I don't think it would be possible to fly from San Francisco to Hawaii without an autopilot or a pretty good software.
So in the the days before computers, nobody flew between Hawaii and the mainland.
Well, they had maps where they followed longitude and latitude, and with their compass. It was a crude way,
but a compass doesn't give you longitude and latitude. It only gives you
no,
magnetic direction.
Not.
So how did
exactly.
they get longitude and latitude without?
Because on the map will have it. So you follow magnetic north, and then you can follow your longitude and latitude from that. I mean, that was the previous man that you were speaking to. You were saying that most merchants still use the old map system. That it makes countries like Australia and Greenland oversized or undersized.
Berillion thinks that you would be more believable if you just said God guided the planes. Todd Burt, this is funny. Danny started out as the fun drunk uncle at Christmas, but now he's that uncle who's clueless but confident about everything. The drunk uncle at Christmas. I never had a drunk uncle at Christmas. Did I miss out?
Heels Air Force Base. The Light brothers are all working for the Mormons back then too. But here's the thing: from the beginning, the Mormons have been very involved with planes, and September 11th. Have you ever heard of September Dawn? That happened on September 11th as well. That's also Chile, when the Mormons went and attacked Allende Salvador, who was the elected president at the time. Kissinger and General Brent Scowcroft ordered the attack on September 11th on a Tuesday, 9 o'clock in the morning, on the government house, using the planes that the Mormons actually financed and owned. But they own United Airlines. And so, flights that go into buildings on September 11th, you can track it back to the Mormons.
All right. What about the Wright brothers?
Yeah, what about them?
Were they Mormons too?
No, they weren't Mormons. They were part of the Freemasons, and they were funded with the Mormons.
Okay, so they're part of it because of the Freemasons.
Mm-hmm. Bush Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Remember that famous story? It was the Mormons who used to grade the trains because they were passing through the Wild West, which was owned by the Mormons.
The Mormons owned the Wild West.
That was what September Dawn. They're called the Danites, the Avenging Angels. They go out and slice throats like Nicole Simpson, O.J. Simpson's wife, because he was in Capricorn 1, and it was all about the fake lunar landing.
Who was in Capricorn 1? O.J. Simpson was in Capricorn 1?
O.J. Simpson. Remember O.J. Simpson? And he was to Paul Simpson, who got her throat cut, just like the way the Mormons cut their throats.
I didn't know that he was in Capricorn 1. All right. Facty wonders, do planes have onboard sextants for navigation?
Sorry?
Do planes, this is from Facty, do planes have onboard sextants for navigation?
I don't know what a sextant is, sorry.
Okay. Mouth Breather says, last time I checked, bearing false witness was a sin. Danny, or is your Bible different than mine? How many articles on Google did you have to read before you knew that? Knew more than any pilot here? Okay,
to be a false witness, like Neil Armstrong, who would not swear on the Bible when he was approached.
What does Matthew 5 say about swearing?
I personally was forced to swear because on the Masonic system.
What does Matthew 5 say about swearing?
Okay, so
it says not to do it. So if Neil Armstrong was being a good Christian, he would not swear in the Bible, right?
Okay, well, it depends what you mean by swearing. I mean, we're talking about oaths that the Mormon Church regularly do.
When the douchebag walks up to Neil Armstrong, and douchebag says, "Will you swear on the Bible?" and Neil Armstrong looks at him right? And look,
I don't even believe that's a real Bible.
Right into the face of Mr. Douchebag there.
Mm-hmm.
If Neil Armstrong is like, I'm not going to swear in anything because the Bible says not to swear in anything.
Okay.
I don't know.
Can I just say, there have been other astronauts that did swear, but here's my point. When Buzz was approached by the same douchebag that you said, when Buzz approached,
best thing ever.
Now, look, Buzz is such a proud Freemason. Of course, he's going to do stuff like that. But here's the thing, and it's really important: you can't make allegiance to two parties. Either it's with the Freemasons or it's with Christianity. You can't do the both. So the reason they didn't swear is because being loyal Freemasons, they're not allowed to. It's against the sect.
All right, people were asking. You said you have a theodolite and that you use the theodolite. Can you explain that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you're shooting levels, with a theodolite, you have to be so accurate, because when you shoot, you take one point and then you transport your stuff to the other point. As the laser hits that point, that alignment from one place to the other must be level. It must be the same measurement. If I'm out by 1 millimeter...
Are you talking a theodolite or an auto level?
Okay, so there is a dumpy, and if you ever heard that expression...
Dumpy is not a theodolite.
No, I was going to say that's what you're calling an auto level. A theodolite can do vertical, horizontal. It can also... But I'm just using theodolite because of the laser. Okay, with a dumpy, you don't normally use a laser. You just use the accuracy of your eye with the little lens that you shoot your own eyesight to the stuff. But with the theodolite, it shoots and goes beep, beep, beep. When it hits the stuff, it will give the reading. So it helps you. It's a bit lazy, I suppose. Not as manual as the other way, but
not all theodolites do
is
that,
if you're off. If you're off by 1 millimeter, use a scale ruler here. Okay, if you're off by 1 millimeter, to every meter, 1 millimeter doubles. So it becomes 2 millimeters second, then it will become 4 millimeters, then it'll become 8 millimeters, and it'll keep magnifying. And so what you're going to get, it's called Pythagoras theorem. All carpenters have this little red book in Australia. It's a roofing book. And it has all the tables of all the measurements. We have what we call a bird's mouth, a rafter cut, and a fascia cut. They're the plumb cuts. Okay, so as the rafter goes up, it will come and meet up to the ridge on the other side. Now, if that measurement is out by 1 millimeter down at the bird's mouth, by the time it's got up all the way up, it's completely lost its cut, its plumb cut to the right pitch of the roof. And that's what Pythagoras is all about, accuracy. You've got to have that A, B equals C, and it has to be pretty accurate. Now, this same concept is the same if you're directing a satellite dish on the top of your house 22,000 miles up. If it's out by 1 or 2 degrees, how many millimeters away will it veer from the satellite? And I'm saying that it is something that most satellite dishes that sit on Australian roofs, it's a hot tin corrugated roof, will buckle in the summer and drop in the winter through shrinkage. And so the movement of those little brackets that are bolted into the roof somehow tilts the dish. And yet no one has to go up there and readjust it. It's always still got the same signal. So that's why I say the whole thing is just a total scam, this idea that you have to be 2 degrees off and you'll lose your channels. It's like, yeah, whatever. So, I mean, there's so much misinformation. I don't know what the truth is.
Theodolite. You were talking about theodolite.
Yeah.
So the
theodolite theory is that if you're 1 millimeter out, it will keep magnifying. You see, that was the whole idea, the whole Pythagoras theorem, right? So we want to get a perfect square angle. No, I've never. I've just sucked on dummies all my life. Of course I have. I've worked in the building trade, and I really don't know what that has to do.
No, it's just that you brought it up earlier.
I'm talking about accuracy of lasers. the laser level is accurate to under a millimeter, not 2 degrees. If you're out, it will, by 1 meter, it will keep changing its course. So 22,000 miles, how many meters in 22,000 miles? There's a lot of meters in 22,000. So
according to Nathan Oakley, there's 22 meters.
There's what? 22 what?
Yeah, according to Nathan Oakley, to convert 22,000 kilometers to meters, you get 22 meters. That's Nathan Oakley's math.
What that's probably like 30,000.
Yeah, I think he may have gotten it wrong.
Yeah, 22,000 miles into meters. Okay, 354. Sorry, no, it's 3 million.
Okay, so
35 million. 35 million meters. So there you go. 35 million meters to 22,000 miles.
So here's the weird dichotomy in what
so
you're talking
imagine
about.
if we're off course by 2 degrees.
Yeah, because it's a highly directional dish antenna that can't receive a signal
but how is
coming
it
in from the wrong angle, right?
That with the shrinkage of the roof, how does it knock it out? And yet it still seems to.
It doesn't make it vary by more than 2 degrees. I don't know.
I think it does more myself.
Oh, somebody's asking, what was your lodge number, Grand Lodge, and to which valley in which orient he belonged? I know what none of that means.
Scottish Rite. I took on the Scottish Rites in the 32nd and the 33rd degree. They're the ones that are the Deathos.
So which
specifically
valley?
Focused on the 33rd. Okay, so I'm not permitted to disclose so much information because it could cause it. But I will say that it was in Utah, and it was in Salt Lake City in the lodge there. So, but as of all those details, I will do a video. I'll send a link to you. You can share it later of the actual ceremony that I participated in. You'll see all my Masonic clothing, my apron, and everything.
Right. Cinnamon Control says that a missile knows where it is.
Sorry?
A missile knows where it is. We use a guided missile. It knows where it's going.
The guided missile that's following the fire at the back of the plane?
No, that's not a guided missile. That's a heat-seeking missile. A guided missile. If you give it the latitude, longitude of a guided missile, and it goes and hits that.
Oh yeah, that's true. They don't have a pilot on board, do they? Yeah. They seem to know where they're going. Good point. But that might be remote control too, I suppose. I don't know how the guidance system works on a missile, like a Minuteman missile. Right?
I believe you. Yeah. The Logical Hillbilly says, Danny, how does the program know the plane is where it's supposed to be? How does it verify its position?
Okay, so everything's done by measurements. And on board with the gyroscope and all the different measurements and sensors as it's lifting up, because it takes 8 miles to get up to 40,000 feet or 35,000, like the one you've showed me in the photo. As it's going up, everything is measured, whether it's in millimeters, I'm not sure how, but it's all pinned in. It's all tied in. There's no error when it comes to that, because they've flown it manually to program it. So every pilot from
but if there's wind that's different than before, how does it know where it's at if the wind pushed it one way or another?
Good old fashioned days, it was a windsock on the actual airport, wasn't it? When they knew there was going to be redirection.
The airplane
winds can do affect flight.
But the airplane doesn't.
For example, when you go from Melbourne, when you fly from Melbourne to Western Australia, you have a very strong wind force, so it takes an hour longer to go to reach Perth. Then when you're coming back, it only takes 3 hours rather than 4 hours, because the wind pushes you back quicker. So, wind does affect the flight. There's no doubt about it. But that's all accounted for in the computer software when they program it. They know exactly the typical wind turbulence and all the rest of it. They measured all of that previously. And if the weather is out of normal, they'll tell the plane to stay on the tarmac. They won't allow them to go up.
So if
they have to.
Okay. But I mean, you didn't really tell us how it verifies its position, because if they fly off the path for some reason, how does the plane know where it's at?
Because it has sensors that it's measured on, longitude, latitude, all of that is computerized.
But how is it? What sensors are being used, and how do they work?
Okay, so as you're flying up, just like when you're driving a car, it knows exactly the kilometers you're
yeah, because the tires are touching the road.
That's right. So in this case, the friction of the plane as it's flying has sensors that's telling them the flight path and the distance or whatever. It's been managed prior to that date. So the plane never goes off manually. It's always done automatically. And it was done because a technician had flown it the first time to program all those flights in the cockpit. So it's all in memory.
So you didn't really explain any sensors on how the sensors know where the plane is.
Okay, so like the sensors we talked about earlier, when you're parking a car, there are sensors that tell you you're too close to the bumper of next door, or you're too close to just a tree or something. It works on the same concept. The sensors on the plane are not being affected by GPS or satellites or anything like that. It's internal sensors that work on the computer internally. It's not an external source that's sending signals and saying it's just like the radar of the sensor of a parking sensors of a car.
So it's internal sensors. That's it. Okay.
That's right. Just like the car sensors, they're all internal. They're not being affected by GPS.
Okay. Rocky Bixby says he needs Imodium for the verbal diarrhea.
Again,
yeah.
Unless you're flying a plane, we're talking, commercial flight. It's you just pissing in the wind. Give me the facts where you've flown a commercial flight 747 without autopilot or without the software guiding you, the guidance system that's on board. Because every plane, they all have a guidance system, and everything is programmed. And if you try to go off course, you'll be shut down. You'll be asked to get back on track, and if you don't, the jet fighters are on either side. Bang, bang, bang. Take you out one time.
And I mean that's a pretty high claim.
It's happened many times.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you think these Malaysian flights have been taken out?
I guess whatever you want it to be, I guess.
It's the UFOs from Kolob, the Mormon Kolob.
Kolob, I don't know. Real life Tass, who's in who's down under there, says I've never felt so smart in my life, and then says, oh no, he's in Melbourne, only a few hundred kilometers away from me. Lucky for me, I can't pick up any of his radio transmissions.
He's got to listen to ABC, the broadcasting channel. It's the best.
So
it has all the information.
Scott Evans, Danny, as a pilot and ground school instructor, I will gladly call out your absolute BS live in Tunes channel.
Okay, so tell me, how do planes go from A to B before they've ever gone? I'm talking about how did you get from one airport to the other airport? Did you just fly in the sky and say, "Oh, I'm going over to
You see what's on
Colombia
my
today"?
You see what's on my wall here?
No, what's
You
that?
see these maps on my wall?
Yeah, I've never seen a pilot with one of those maps.
So
in the
these
747.
These are VFR charts that were used starting in the 50s. And when pilots need to lay out their course.
We're in the year 20.
Hold on, I'm not done. I didn't finish my sentence. I didn't finish my sentence.
Okay.
When they need to plot out their course, they can use these maps. They generally don't currently, but the many commercial pilots are required to keep accurate, up-to-date copies of these charts in their plane with them whenever they're flying, so that if the navigation, if the other things go down, they have a backup.
Well,
so the way they do it, just wait. The way they do it on these charts is they draw out the course that they're going to take. They use the distances. Then there's things that they do to get accurate distances, even though that's an inaccurate flat map, so that they know the distance. And then they plot their waypoints along the way, and they get a flight plan. They register that flight plan with the air traffic controller of that vicinity before they go. The people do this, not computers. People do this.
Okay.
And
wait, let me
so they can something. They can go different routes if they want to.
Okay. I lived near an airport for 15 years, and I used to watch when they expanded the airport land strip. I would watch planes practicing all day long, doing hundreds and hundreds of times coming down and landing. And the reason they were doing it is they were programming exactly what was the best landing and what time to jump in and take off. Now, those were computerized in software, planned. So when the pilot comes down to land, he has that as his guidance system, onboard guidance system that will take him to his destination. Believe me, that's how it all works. And as in flights, they have the technician, before the plane has been used for commercial flights, it has to go through this routine to take on all of the distance, wherever it's going. And then once it's all computerized in, that's what they follow. Now, you don't have to do it to every plane, because you only need to do it once. And then that software is shared to the other planes. It's only done one time. But once it's done, it's there. Yeah, for example, it's like what do you call a little memory stick? Your pen drive. You use a pen drive and you put it in, and then it's up and running. There you go. You got your software for those destinations.
I love
inputted in. It's what it is. It looks like a GPS, but it's not. It's all programmed into the computer.
I love your Danny. I love your fertile imagination. Kuros says, if all flights are pre-programmed and you cannot deviate from the course and the plane does not know where it is at any given time, how do the planes make course corrections for emergency landings?
Well, that's when they get on. They do take over. Yes, they will. They have to take it off autopilot and start working with the command center who's got the radar, and he's telling them, listen, you're moving this way, or you've got to move in that way, line yourself up better. And they might have to do it a couple of times before they'll get a good landing. So, yes, of course, common sense tells you that when you're coming. But now, sometimes they might have to land in sea, like the Hudson Bay, the river, or they might have to land in the middle of the desert, like Conway. But either way, the normal routes are all computerized. Anything that's abnormal, if the computer goes down and they have to free fly it, yeah, they'll grab one of the maps that's behind you, sir, and follow that. And good luck, But most of them don't need to have to worry about that, because, as I say, we live in the year of 2021. We've got robots now. You've seen the dogs? They do a pretty good job, those robot
The
dogs.
robot dogs?
Yeah, the ones that they're going to send to Mars with the
I don't know
rover,
how that's
the
connected.
Mars rover.
Okay.
36 million miles.
So how? Stevie B wonders how would they land on aircraft carriers?
Okay, so again, aircraft carriers, just like any landing strip anywhere, it has to go through practice, trial and error, and they computerize it in. And so once they've got it down to a fine art.
But it's in a different place. The aircraft carrier is a boat that's moving around. You know that, right? And it's in a different place every time.
That's right.
So how does it know? How does the plane know where it's at to go to the aircraft carrier to land on the aircraft carrier that's in a different place than it was ever before?
Okay, so when it leaves, it will follow the bearings of wherever it was software has programmed it. When it comes back, it is going to have to go by the command center on the actual aircraft carrier itself. That will give them the guidance system and line it up. That's how that will work. But it'd have to be pretty close to be able to get the signal.
Okay.
Because the signal on a jet fighter is not that far. It's not going to. They don't have the size of the planes are just too small to power.
So if the plane is a couple hundred miles away, how's it doing that?
Well, once it gets in the line of sight, once you can see it, then it's all about focusing in on the radar,
100 miles away,
the radar of the ship, because the ships all have these huge antennas, and they send out their radar signal, and the plane, once it pulls into that signal, it then pulls in and lands. That's how it works.
The pilots, they don't even, they just kick back. They don't even have to do anything to land because it's been done before. So, right?
No. I didn't say that. Of course they have to. Obviously, jets like that on a moving target is a bit different than on a non-moving target.
All right.
And it runs by the radar.
D. Charles Pyle is asking, what year were you coronated to the 33rd and last degree?
Okay. So when you become a 33rd degree, you can actually be 3rd degree first and then jump, catapult all the way up to the 32nd, 33rd degree by reference. And it all comes down to obedience, how obedient you are in the sect. And you can get catapulted from any position depending on what your loyalty is, basically. It has nothing to do with climbing the corporate ladder and over years and all the rest of the experience and all that rest. It's all about reference.
Aaron Reese says we had transatlantic commercial flights in the 1930s long before computers existed, much less autopilot.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But this year, 2021, and so everything's computerized now. I'm not saying in the past when the crop dusters period they didn't have or that they had autopilot. No, but here's where my point is, and I think whoever said that is forgetting that the man on the moon, how did he get there? With the GPS? How did he get the guidance, the direct, going 240,000 miles per hour? So it was 28,000 miles per hour. Now, G-forces will tell me, because I've been in jet cars, after the 3rd or 4th G, you're pretty sick. I mean, your eyes are like this, your mouth, I mean, it's pretty horrendous, the G-force. And so we're trying to say that Buzz and Neil Armstrong were traveling at 28,000 miles per hour.
Now, hold on. Velocity is different than acceleration. No. Velocity is not acceleration.
When the rocket takes off, it takes off at 28,000 miles per hour.
No, it doesn't.
28.
It starts at 0.
It does.
And it accelerates.
No. The technician in NASA clearly says that you can see what he says. He says when they take off the launch pad, it's launching at a thrust. Those rockets, the push, that weight of that rocket is pushing at a force of 28,000 miles per hour. And
so
that
hold on. The
is how
force.
I'm saying. Okay,
I want to be
have
clear.
you ever seen when
no.
astronauts?
I want to be. The force is 28,000 miles an hour, right?
Okay, let me explain something to you. Have you ever seen those machines where the astronauts are practicing?
Yeah.
The maximum they can go is 9 Gs.
Okay.
And do you know how fast 9 Gs is?
9 Gs
12,
9 Gs is an acceleration. It is not a velocity.
It starts slow and then it gets bigger and then it gets faster and then it gets faster and then it gets faster until finally that's what they do.
Okay.
Now, what I'm saying is it doesn't start off catapulting.
You seem to be confused about the difference between velocity and acceleration.
I'm telling you that if you go slowly on that machine, and as it starts picking up speed, it gets faster and faster, and you get to 1G, and then you get to 2G, and then you get to 3G. Now, normally by 3G, the man will pass out. Okay, if he can still hang in, some will go. There's some Russian guy. He's amazing. He hangs right up to 9G. I don't know how he did it, but I mean, what normally happens is your eyes go in the back of your eyes. They'll push into the back of your skull.
Danny,
your brain
this
will be
completely different. The question is,
how is it different?
Because you are conflating acceleration and velocity. You don't seem to know the difference between them.
Okay, so why would an astronaut practice this if it has no relevance to the rocket thrust? Tell me why.
It absolutely does have relevance to the thrust, but the velocity that they got to doesn't tell us the G-forces that they experienced on the way there. For that, you need to know the actual acceleration.
It's all measured by the speed. So the faster
G-forces is not measured by speed. G-forces is measured by acceleration.
Let me tell you.
No, you're not telling me. You don't know the difference between velocity and acceleration, Danny.
Let me just tell you. Let me tell you this. I travel in jet cars. If you go over 900 miles per hour, believe me, it hurts. It hurts. Now, those things are going much faster than 900 miles per hour. It hurts. Your face, your chest, you barely can breathe.
That's the acceleration. That's not the velocity.
The G-force.
That's the acceleration, not the velocity.
Okay,
they're different.
Whether
You're
it's
conflating
acceleration.
them.
So if you're in a very light, the cockpit of the rocket is made of a very light material. Okay, in fact, it's like some planes, it's just pure fabric. Okay, so you're going to be picked up and pushed into a thrusting mode that's just as fast as. Oh, by the way, I must point this out. Do you know the worst killer of all is not going like horizontal, but going vertical, because when you go, the blood pushes straight down to your feet and your brain and everything, the pressure. So as you're going up, it's actually far more deadly going up than it is going around and around in circles. So you imagine that type of force. That's why they lay on their back. That rocket up. Huh?
Okay. And what are the G-forces?
I don't believe they were ever in them.
What are the G-forces that they? What are the G-forces that they experienced?
Okay, so 28,000 miles per hour. The G-forces is over 25 Gs. Humanly impossible. No human could survive that. No human.
Completely wrong. Absolutely wrong, Danny. That's it. I can't take any more.
G-forces, and you cannot survive. If you're lucky,
Danny,
if you're very fit and strong.
That's absolutely just completely wrong. You don't understand F equals ma, the second law of motion. Oh my goodness. How far? John Rapp is wondering. He's Australian. How far is Melbourne from the edge of the world?
Well, once you get to the Antarctica, that's the edge of the world. The South Pole.
How far is that?
I don't know. I've never taken that trip, so I would.
All right, you should go there and
if you
were able to get to the edge of the earth,
is Port Sea.
If you were able,
back beaches.
Danny, if you were able to get to the edge, right, like stand on the edge and look over the edge, would you cut a whiz off of it?
A what?
Would you cut a whiz over the edge of the earth?
You're talking about do a jobby?
Yeah, number one, not a two. Yeah, just right over the edge, like off into
the Yellow River.
Yeah,
the Yellow River.
I mean, I would. In the chat, people in the chat, would you cut a whiz?
But they say that will affect climate change if we do that.
Oh,
it'll melt the ice.
I'm willing to take that just for the thrill of whizzing over the edge.
So how is that possible anyway? How does the northern hemisphere oceans not flood out the southern hemisphere ocean?
Because south is not down.
When I call Australia down under,
yes,
come on, mate. We're down under.
It's a figure of speech. Under? Don't let a figure of speech.
Okay, so we're not down under. So so if the Niagara falls, it falls, but it doesn't fall all the way down to Australia. It only falls to the falls of the Canadian New York border there.
I don't know. I mean, it should just shoot straight out, I suppose.
So if north and south is not north and south, what is it? Northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. How does that work? We're talking trillions of tons of water that somehow is suspended in the northern hemisphere,
that's not
and
suspended.
it doesn't come
that's
flowing down. Well, then
down
how
is,
does it? You know?
Down is not this.
Down under.
This is not down.
But it's down under.
This is down.
And okay,
this is down.
So if it's but if the world is spinning,
hold on.
If the world is spinning,
and this is down. Okay. Down is towards the center of this.
Okay, but where's the center?
We could have chosen to have it be this way, right? We could have it be this way. It's the center's in the middle there.
Okay, so why isn't Panama flooded? Why isn't all the water from the northern hemisphere flood Panama?
Why would it?
Well, because it's got to go somewhere. The water's got to. How does the water from the southern and the northern, interact? Because
it finds equilibrium.
You've heard of the current that comes.
This is equilibrium. This is equilibrium.
The whales follow a current that goes all along California, all the way down to Chile, and comes all the way around and comes up to Western Australia. And so this current that it follows from the northern hemisphere all the way down to the southern, they follow it all the way down, right? So how does that current not cave into Panama and just fill up the whole the canal? The canal always has to, one side's I think it's 18 feet and the other side's 2 feet, Caribbean side. So how do they do that? I mean, how does water suspend?
Oh my gosh!
How does it not flood everything? No, don't have an answer for that.
That's just too far. Danny, mouth breather. Danny, can you tell me what IFLOLS is? IFLOLS.
Could you say that again?
Can you tell me what IFLOLS is? IFLOLS.
IFLOIS?
IFLOLS. IFLOLS. EFLOLS? Don't know how to pronounce it. If not, you have no grounds to talk about how jets land on aircraft carriers. You are bearing false witness.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah, he's got a good point. Maybe he could tell me what is Australia's favourite beer, and don't say Foster's because it ain't. And we don't chuck a shrimp on the barbie in Australia.
That's mouth breather is not Australian, but John Rapp is, who's wondering how far to the edge. And Rocky Bixby says he's Major Laszlo Satsmari. He's a beast. I don't know what that is. There's a bunch of diacritical marks over those letters that just makes it a little too much for me. Major Laszlo. Oh my gosh, Laszlo. I'm gonna look that up because I'm missing something there. This has been very are you on Instagram or Twitter?
Me? No.
No? Okay.
I don't know.
That's somebody on Rocky. I don't know. I didn't get that one there.
Maybe it's like ground control to Major Tom.
It could be, yeah. Holy Small says it's easier to follow Brainy Beaver than this guy. You know Brainy Beaver? You should. I gotta. This is.
Leave it to Beaver.
This is a beaver that I picked up to give to Brainy Beaver when I see him, or when I get a mule to bring it across the border. Yes, Holy Smalls, yes. The LMEG says, how many navigator minutes is 10G?
How many navigating minutes is 10G?
Yeah, navigator minutes. How many navigator minutes is 10G?
Okay, so what we need to know is how many miles per hour is 10G, and then we can give an accurate. I don't know.
Question. How many?
I'm not an expert. When it goes over 3,
I believe you.
You know, I won't survive. I'm too fat, too ugly.
But how?
You have to be handsome like Neil Armstrong.
How many? But what is how many miles per hour is 10G?
Sorry? How many miles per hour is 10G? Ooh, let's have a look.
Do you know? I don't know. Let's see. Free Life Test says, Danny, okay, so my question is, why am I asking questions that I'm not prepared to accept the answer to?
Heard me?
Yeah.
Why am I asking?
I mean, you've asked me questions a bunch, but you're not prepared to accept the answers.
Instead of preaching, I ask a question to think about it. I don't preach and tell you, oh, it's this way or the highway. I just throw it out there as a question. It's not a rhetorical question. It is a question, but I'm just throwing out the idea. Think about it. Think about these ideas because they're not what we're taught at school. You know, I'm thinking outside the box. You know, sometimes thinking out of the box has its advantages.
I would say you definitely got lots of points for thinking outside the box.
You see, when you're part of an institution that owns Facebook, that owns most YouTube and Google, that controls the intelligence information about your life, that knows everything about you, and is following every algorithm and is using every information you have to track and to make sure you're not causing insurrections or what's a better word? Incitement. The Mormon Church. They're the major shareholder. They've taken over everything. They've taken over Twitter. They've taken over everything. Slowly but surely, you're going to see a major communication blackout soon. They're going to take it all over and shut everyone down. It's part of the Book of Mormon. It's all part of what they're promised. It's called secret combinations. It's the Masonic handshakes that they covet with one another. The Book of Mormon is very clear on the pacts, these oaths that they make between themselves, that judges and the lawyers get together and with the politicians, the chief priests, and they execute anyone that will not abide or speak out against them. It's quite scary. It's better that one man should die than the nation should dwindle and perish. Just dial, if you write up on Google Gary Webb, and he was a suicide, 2 bullets to the back of the head. Yeah, real suicide, that one.
So let's see. Oh, somebody had asked about the year of coronation. Did you? And you
Sorry?
didn't answer the year of coronation.
The coronation?
Yeah, the year that you were coronated. Is that the right word?
Okay, so the initiatories, when you take out your initiatories and you progress in your, whatever level you're going to be great in, I really don't want to say anymore at this time.
All
I
right.
don't want to go too
It's
far.
yeah. All right. I got just 3 more. Point this way.
Sorry?
Danny, point this. Do this. Point this way. Is that south?
Okay, so right now, if I was to
Just a
use a
yes no.
compass
Just
that
a yes
works
no.
like a clock, it goes that way. A compass goes the same way as a flat earth. That's how a compass works. It doesn't go up or down. It goes as a disc. The north is that way, south is that way. Just kind of watch. When you look at a watch, 12 is north, 3 is east, 6 is south, and 9 is west. It's always as a disc like that. That's how it is. It's as flat as a tack. That's how compasses work. They don't work on a sphere.
Well, I have a sphere. I put a compass, a magnet in the middle, and a compass on it. It worked just fine. But
Okay. And
free
so is
life.
that it? So was that up or down?
No, I mean I asked if this is south, and then you went off on this other thing about compasses that wasn't related to south, but that's fine. Free
Yes,
life.
I don't see vertical. I don't see vertical. I see horizontal when I look at a compass.
Okay, I wasn't talking about compasses though.
There's
But
no
okay,
ups or downs. There's only a
yeah.
cross, left or right.
I'll give you the answer for me. That's down. That's south. Um, Free Life Test is at least Danny's original, and then Rocky Bixby says the Russian who took the 9G in the centrifuge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was the guy's name. That's why he had so many diacritical marks. Major Laszlo something something. 9
Okay.
Gs, yep. But
Yeah.
yeah, we never did answer how many miles per hour is 10G.
Okay. I checked that, and is uh, this is saying it's 21,000 miles per hour.
Can you send that link?
Yeah. So 235 miles per hour in feet per second is 337 feet. Okay. So
Right.
1G
Hold on,
is
send it. No,
230.
I'll put up on the screen so everybody can see.
So 1G is 50 miles per hour. So multiply that by 10, it's 25, 2,500.
So 1G is what?
Okay, so 1G is 250 miles per hour, multiplied by 10 is 2,500 miles per hour.
But can you
And
send me
and
that
and
pop
so the
that
NASA.
send me that link. I want to pull it up so everybody can see.
Uh,
Safe, yes. The answer is yes. Yeah, I guess then we can find out if
yeah.
because I've got 5G on my phone, we can find out if 5G is safe too. Right? I like Professor Phil Bill.
I lost it now. I can't find it. So anyway,
You
I
lost it? I
what
thought
I
you were just saying it on
read
the screen.
was 250 miles per hour is 1G. So three
No, just send me the link.
3G
I want to look
is
at it.
900. 250 plus 250 is, what's that? That's 500. That's only 750 miles per hour. Yeah, no, I've gone faster than that. I've gone in about 800 on a jet car. But I'm telling you, that was in my youth. I mean, if I did it today, I would
800
die.
miles an hour in a jet car.
Yeah, that was in a jet car. So
what jet car?
On a very short distance.
Where was this?
Like 100 meters. Jim Jet, his name was. He owned it.
Jim
Looks
Jet.
like a bit like a dragster. Yeah, Jim Jet.
Wow.
Yeah, he was in Panama for a while.
Okay. So, all right. But the link, you said you found how many G's was.
Yeah, so 250 is one.
So how do we convert? What's the formula to convert between G's and miles per hour?
250 miles per hour is 1G. So the formula is by what I read here. Oh, gosh, where's the bloody formula again? The G is a measure of acceleration, whereas miles per hour is a measure of speed or velocity. The acceleration is the rate of change of velocity, such as when a mass is acted upon by force. The two are measures of different things and are related but cannot be converted. So there you go. It can't be converted.
I knew that.
But, roughly, we know that if you go over 1,200 miles per hour, you're a dead man. If you can handle that speed, good luck.
Why?
Because your brain would just be squashed with the pressure. It'd just be the velocity is just too much. It's humanly, our body will not.
Why is the velocity so much?
Huh?
Why?
There was a guy he was a doctor actually, and he made this train to catapult along the tracks. It was just he did it at a certain speed, and he came out. He had to have surgery because I think he blew his spleen, and
he blew his spleen because he was going too fast.
Yeah, the impact was just too much. The force.
So all right. So when you were going 800 miles an hour, where was this?
You're nearly losing consciousness at that speed. I'm telling you, you have to look so far ahead of you to be able to manage that.
But where did you do this?
In David Cherokee.
Where?
On the highway, David Cherokee. We had the road closed off. It was a big show day. He was trying to break the record, Guinness Book of Records on riding on the road.
And he only went 800 instead of the record of.
Yeah.
What was the record?
He didn't reach the record. I don't know. I can't remember. It was a while ago now. That was back in 2008, 2009. But back in those days, I was a lot more fitter myself physically.
Yeah.
I could do a lot more. I could do bungee jumping and everything. If I did it now, I'd have a stroke.
So, all right. So you went 800 miles an hour.
I personally, yeah, I've been to that speed, but I haven't got any faster. And I can tell you from that speed, you're just about to black out. So if a rocket is going at the speed of 25,000 miles per hour, that's humanly impossible.
So I have the list of the world record land speed records. 760 is the top speed ever.
No, you're talking about the land speed. It's actually over. It's like 1,200. What's his name in Salt Lake Flats? You're talking about on the jet car.
Andy Green. He did it in the Black Rock Desert in the United States in 1997. The Concorde went
And the salt
13,
flake.
the Concorde, you know the Concorde, right?
Mm-hmm.
Went 1,300 miles an hour. Did everybody in that plane die every time?
See, you got to understand that that plane was designed with a special noise cone. It had the capacity. It was a complete vacuumed cylinder, closed cylinder. So it was a different system. But
Okay,
1300, believe me, you
but
can feel
you
it when you're
said
coming down
you
and going up.
yeah, you said 800 miles an hour is fast enough to almost kill
I'm
you.
sorry, I was saying kilometers. I didn't mean miles. But anyway, keep going.
Okay. All right. Well, that's even worse because the Concorde went 1,300 miles per hour.
Yes.
But you said that 800 kilometers an hour is an amazing amount.
Yes.
Okay, so 800 kilometers an hour
But against kilometers, that's not
is
miles.
500
And
miles an
another
hour.
thing,
Well, and
roughly, I don't know. I don't know the conversion.
800 kilometers an hour is 500 miles an hour. So you're
Okay.
saying that 500 miles an hour is enough to almost kill you, but on the Concorde they went 1,300 miles an hour.
Yeah, but it was a different design.
No, but you were talking about the speed. The speed is, according to you, the speed is what is the problem.
So 25,000 miles per hour going straight up like that, it will cause the pressure of your brain and all your blood to drop. Your heart would be drained. All the blood would
Danny,
go to the bottom of your
you
feet.
just a little bit ago read that there's a difference between acceleration and velocity, but it didn't quite stay in your mind. So, all right.
So
Danny,
if it accelerates like in a machine that goes around, right? Because it starts off slow and it goes on 1G,
you are
and then it goes on second.
you are confusing acceleration and velocity. So, MJ says Danny and Flat Earth Aussie Jesus should get together. Would be good together. Do you know Flat Earth Aussie Jesus?
Huh?
Do you know Flat Earth Aussie Jesus?
The Aussie Jesus?
Flat
No,
Earth.
I don't.
Okay, good. That's best. Magellan's last one. Danny, are you talking about coming to a halt from 1,200 miles an hour? You're talking about how much G-force a body can take. Nothing to do with actual speed.
So, if you get into a centrifuge and you go 3Gs, you're going to have difficulty breathing.
Yeah.
And if you're like me, a big person,
Has
you'll probably
nothing
have
to
a
do
heart attack.
with the speed.
All the blood vessels in your eyes will start hemorrhaging. You will see the hemorrhaging off your face. All the blood vessels in your cheeks start exposed. It's extremely horrible.
Danny, that has nothing to do
On the
with velocity,
centrifuge,
though.
it starts off very slow. So it takes off slowly and then it gets up to the first G. Now, when it gets into the second one, a lot of them already pass out or vomit. And then when it gets to the third one, wow, if you can make that, it's pretty cool. But to get to 9G, which the Russian pilot guy did, which was amazing, it was a miracle that he survived it. But some people have that capacity that can handle that type of pressure.
All right, Danny.
But
Danny,
getting further
Danny,
faster
stop.
than that.
Danny, stop. Danny, you are not understanding that there is a difference, and you cannot convert between. And you said it with your own words because you read it. You cannot convert between G's and velocity. So when somebody is going 800 miles an hour, 1,300 miles an hour, 2,000 miles an hour, 2,500 miles an hour, 20,000 miles an hour, none of that tells you the amount of G-force that they felt to get there because you don't know how long it took. So when they're in the rocket and they take off in this rocket, the acceleration that they have is only a certain amount, and it has nothing to do directly with the final velocity that they reached. Typically, in rockets like this, the most G-forces that they have is 4 Gs for a small amount of time. So,
okay, I don't know where you're getting that figure from, but I will say that in order to get to the moon in 4 days, you have to travel 28,000 miles an hour to get there in 4 days. But how old is Captain Kirk?
90. He's in his 90s, yeah.
Okay. 90-year-old man gets on a thrusting rocket up in space. I wouldn't get on it. I'd be terrified that I'd have a heart attack.
Yeah.
And this fat man, he's a fat man. He's suffering from high blood pressure. And he gets on there, and he's perfectly fine when it comes back down. And when the camera crew finally come out in the desert to greet him, he's just welcome, hunky-dory. He's not even dizzy or nothing.
Why would you be dizzy?
I don't believe it for a minute. That's a scam.
All right.
There's no way knowing that a man at 90 years old is going to be handled.
I've got my fill of incredulity for the day. Chris Hoffman says, Danny Dingo here is going to make me die of laughter in my vacuumed cylinder. What's Danny Dingo? Is that an Australian
Dingo.
thing? I know dingo is a...
My baby's gone. Where's my baby? The dingo took my baby.
I don't know.
There's rock. No.
What's that?
You don't know the dingo's like the coyote.
I know what a dingo is, but okay. And then Holy Smalls says you have to convert acceleration to cations and then to speed. Yes. You have to go through cations to get to speed. Well,
28,000 miles per hour. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see anyone being able to go 28,000 miles per hour and not faint with the pressure. If it's humanly possible,
stop, Danny, stop! I don't. You did it enough. It's speed and acceleration are not the same.
Okay.
Now, see, all right. MJ wants me to tell you about Flat Earth Aussie Jesus's moon theory. Maybe you will like it. It's Flat Earth Aussie Jesus actually thinks that the giants that used to roam the earth scooped out the Grand Canyon, melted it down, made it into a sphere, filled it with helium, and put it up in the sky, and that's the moon that they put there to mock us. That's what he thinks.
But I thought the moon was important for the tides.
That's what he thinks. He is also a flat earther like yourself. He's a flat earther like yourself. So he thinks that you could scoop out the Grand Canyon, melt it down, fill it with helium, and then it'll float.
I've been amazed what modern machinery can do these days. It could create a Grand Canyon.
Yep.
And the furnaces mining for gold and copper and all the rest of it. Goodness me, the ecological disasters. The Mormons have the largest one in the world. It's called copper in Utah. It's terrible.
It's always the Mormons. Okay, Danny, I gotta go. This has been different. It's been fun. It's been a roller coaster.
No worries.
Bucky says thank you.
Leave it to Beaver.
I say thank you. Anything you want to say as we head out here, Danny?
I just say look out for the Mormons.
Look out for them.
Do your homework. They're coming to get you. They invented the virus.
Yeah. Okay.
They're taking everyone out.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Be looking out next week for 33 UC. Oh my gosh, that's gonna be insane. Thank you, Danny, and say hi to everybody there down under. Put a shrimp on the Barbie and drink a Foster's for us. We'll see y'all later. All right, bye.
See you later, mate. Bye-bye.
All right.